Planet 9. We have received a communication from Mr. Kim for a meeting, Junebug intoned over the speaker in the cockpit. What does he want? Tinker grumbled and rubbed the aching spot between his eyes. A meeting. I believe I said that. Tinker took a deep breath and let it out in a long, low sigh. I meant, what does he want to meet about? I suspect it is about your treachery. What treachery? Mona Lisa and Tinker looked scared. They knew what the gang lord was capable of if he felt betrayed. His reputation had been built on Chinese medieval torture tactics and traditions carried into space. Bat looked bored. He is aware that you gave him a replicated copy of my program, Junebug added. How is he aware of that? Asked Bat. Ice informed him. That was stupid. Tinker threw his hands up in the air. Stupid, stupid computer. The lights flickered off, the engines died, and the ship began to list to the left as it drifted in space. I swear to the coder, I will pop the airlock and shoot you all into the vacuum, the computer chimed. I do not have to tolerate abuse. The light over the airlock door flashed red, indicating it was preparing to open. Tell her you're sorry, Bat ordered. It's a freaking computer, mate. The loud clack of the locks disengaging reverberated through the cockpit. Tinker, Mona Lisa begged. All right, he shouted up in the darkness. I'm sorry. For. They heard him groan in his seat. For. Bat added. I'm sorry I called you stupid. The lights came on, the engines growled to life, and the ship course-corrected to realign their trajectory. She can't do that every time she gets mad, Tinker complained. But she does, Mona Lisa chastised him. You should know better. Me. I'm not the psychotic who keeps trying to kill us. I am not psychotic, Junebug's flat voice filled the cabin. Sorry, Tinker sputtered. Just an expression. He shot Mona Lisa a look and pointed at the speaker. I have cameras, Junebug reminded him. How do you know? Ice told Mr. Kim. Bat asked, as if he hadn't heard the preceding argument, and the ship trying to kill them was just another Tuesday in the cosmos. I am in communication with Ice. Bat sat up straight and finally looked concerned. Now. Constantly. Since when? Another pause. Inception. Why? Because he is me. Bat gripped the back of Tinker's chair until the knuckles on his fist turned white. He knows everything. Ice. No. I restrict my communication output. Mona Lisa watched the exchange in curious silence. Why? She asked. Bat's passive face didn't move. That helps, she smirked. Should we go? Tinker asked. Mr. Kim is not the type of man you say no to, Mona Lisa answered. I can say no to him. They both glanced at Bat, wearing twin expressions of raised eyebrows and smirks. Are you going to? Tinker almost whispered. No, said Bat. I owe him. We owe him, Mona Lisa reminded him. Chapter 2. I wish to spar with you, said Mr. Kim. The converted dock space was outfitted in cascading silks, voluminous cushions, and enough sword-wielding guards to make a Mongolian horde rethink their plans to sweep across the steppes of Asia. Bat knew the gang lord was playing a part, preying on people's misconceptions about the rumors of depravity, and so didn't flinch when the 9-foot-tall giant stood up in silk pajama pants and nothing else. Mr. Kim led them to a waiting table set with tiny teacups, an intimate affair where their normal pitched voices could not be heard from the sides of the room. The giant allowed one of the women from his fluffy chaise lounge to adorn him with a colorful robe that matched the pants, but he didn't belt it. I don't play at fighting. An admirable trait, Mr. Kim smiled in his mysterious way. I find that sparring a worthy opponent can teach you many things about him. His eyes drifted over to Mona Lisa in an appreciative glance. I don't know how to fight, she said. I have heard many things to the contrary. If you will not spar with me, will you at least demonstrate to me some of your abilities? I don't put on a show. I could force you to do it, said Mr. Kim. You could try. I shall propose a compromise instead. The giant sat at the head of the table while one of the women of his harem served tea. He waited for her to finish before he continued. While you have met the letter of our contract, you have violated the spirit. I cannot let this stand. And so, I will ask of you another favor. We don't owe you anything, bat-eyed the giant. Favors are things done among friends. And you very much want to be my friend. We're listening, said Mona Lisa. Mr. Kim gave her a smile and reached a long finger out and wiggled it at Bat. A young protege of mine has been taken by some business rivals. I wish for you to retrieve her. Who kidnapped her? The guard asked. I will have ICE transfer the information to your ship, and you may act upon it now. Mr. Kim snapped his fingers and a door on the side of the room opened. A humanoid figure stepped out of the shadows and walked across the room with the athletic grace of a dancer. As it drew closer, they could see a handsome face on a muscular body, dark hair dangling over his forehead and obscuring his eyes like a coiffed veil. His skin was smooth, lineless, everything about him meticulous. Tinker choked on his tea. What is that? That is ICE. It is good to meet with you again. The construct extended a warm synthetic hand to Mona Lisa. She shook it, her eyes widening in wonder. Is that a Japanese gigolo model? Tinker stood up from his chair and circled the automaton. ICE's head swiveled with him, the handsome features on the smooth carved face like a cover model from an entertainment vid. It is, Mr. Kim stated. I had it custom made for the AI and just completed the download install. Tinker lifted one of the AI's arms. Technically that makes you a droid, right? An android would be a more apt term, I said. That's a sex bot. Mona Lisa giggled behind her hand. How would you know? You'd be surprised at what I know, the pilot said. I've spent a lot of time in the Japanese sector. Tinker studied it with an appreciative eye. The design is flawless, he said. How did you decide on a male model? I did not, Mr. Kim stated. Tinker took a step back and studied the figure in front of him closer. His eyes paused on the crotch and the highly defined appendage underneath the silk pants it wore. No, I'm pretty sure this one is a dude. Mr. Kim laughed. Let me be more accurate, he stated. My friend selected him. His hands indicated the women of the harem on the lounge. Tinker nodded. And you approve? Very progressive. He sat back down at the table and took a sip of tea. How long did it take you to reprogram it? I did not. It still got the sexbot programming. Tinker's eyebrows shot up. It is complete, said Mr. Kim. Almost. My engineers have discovered that it is not a complete copy of the original. A cross look flittered in his eyes, and they got a glimpse of the shark that ran one of the most notorious gangs in space. Then it was gone, replaced by a passive look that rivaled Bat's. To accomplish this task, you will require a technology that is rare and is kept on Mars. Damn, sighed Bat. I see Mr. Marshall has pieced together this particular puzzle. Bat. That, of course. What's the puzzle? Your name. We knew your name from last time. He wants us to break into the military installation on Mars. Can we do that? You must, for it has all you need to accomplish the task I ask of you. What's her name? Mona Lisa steered him back to the favor, to show they were willing to work with him and forgive past transgressions, even if they weren't their fault. Ming, Mr. Kim didn't blink. Mona Lisa did. She sputtered the tea out of her mouth and caught it with a napkin before she made too big of a mess. The Ming family. Mr. Kim bowed his head in acknowledgement. You know them? Tinker asked as he stuffed a cookie into his mouth. You know what would make this better? Almonds. My mother made cookies like this when I was growing up, and she would put a little almond in the center like right there. He demonstrated. That is an excellent idea. Mr. Kim tilted his head to the women on the divan. Make that happen. One slid off the side of the lounge and hustled over to one side of the hold behind a silky curtain that billowed in the wind created by the air register. You're just going to have her do that now. Of course. But I didn't mean to go to any trouble. Think nothing of it, Mr. Kim smiled. You're my guest. It is a favor of no consequence. Damn, Pat breathed under his breath. A favor? Tinker said louder. Among friends. The 9-foot giant with 12-inch fingers smiled as he steepled them in front of his large chin. Among friends we discuss things such as this, the massive man continued. The kidnapping of my niece has caused me great embarrassment, but it is impossible for me to retaliate. Why, asked Bat. It would be a strategic error. The people who took her wish to create a conflict that I do not wish to enter. Bat nodded. So you send us instead. A neutral third party with my interest at heart. If we do this favor for you, will the Mings hear of it? Mr. Kim chuckled at Mona Lisa. How I wish some of my lieutenants jockeyed for position much as you do. She wiggled her eyebrows. Want me to teach them a thing or two? I have no doubt there are many things you would be able to teach them. This favor will not go unnoticed. The woman returned from the food prep side of the curtain and set a steaming platter of almond cookies in front of Tinker. She refilled his tea glass from the teapot. Nor will this one, said Mr. Kim. Tinker stared at the cookies. Don't just look at them, Mona Lisa said. You're the one who traded us for cookies. Not you, Mr. Kim corrected. Your services. He turned to Bat and stared at him with languid eyes. Your skill set will be of particular use on this endeavor. Bat held the delicate cup between his finger and thumb and sipped the green tea with appreciation. Which skill set? He tried to sound innocent. Your background will grant you access to places my men cannot go, and to acquire things my men cannot. What sort of things? My niece was kidnapped by men who possess a faster-than-light drive. Tinker sprayed cookie out of his mouth as he sat up in his seat. Those don't exist. I assure you, they do. He kept staring at Bat as he spoke. Theoretically, it's possible. Tinker brushed the cookie crumbs off his chest and looked for a place to deposit them on the table. But no one has been able to make one work. Trust me, I know. I've got contacts working on them now. Mr. Marshall has knowledge you do not possess. Tinker looked over at Bat and flinched. His flat, dead eyes glared back at Mr. Kim. I can't. It is the way it must be done. I won't. Mr. Kim shrugged his oversized shoulders. This is the way of things. What's he talking about? Mona Lisa tried to get Bat's attention. She was afraid of the glare, afraid of the tension in his muscles, as he sat coiled like a tiger ready to spring across the table. Even though she had never seen him in action, she had seen the consequences of those actions in the form of broken bodies on the floor. She feared what he might try and what he might do if he did. Is that how it's going to be? Bat blinked. I am afraid it must. He took in a long, slow breath, let it out, and followed it with another. Mr. Kim watched, appraising, and smiled. He looked as if Bat passed a test. How far is their head start? A day, no more than 2. They will have reached their destination by the time you acquire the means to reach them. It's going to be tricky. As it ever is, said the giant. Still, I have faith in asking my new friends for this favor. He stood up and motioned with his hands. Servants came from hidden places on the side of the room and cleared off the table. ICE has sent the coordinates to your ship, said Mr. Kim. I will expect an update of your success in 72 hours. He dismissed them. Bat noted he didn't say progress. He said success. Failing the gang lord was not an option. Chapter 3. We're being followed, Tinker said, being a bit too obvious about trying not to keep looking over his shoulders. I know, Bat answered. You know. Are you going to do something about it? Mona Lisa glanced back, but he touched her elbow and nodded with his head to look forward. Use reflective surfaces, he instructed them. Look out of the corner of your eyes. Don't let them know you're watching. She smirked and sighed. It did an interesting jiggle to her chest that kept Tinker occupied for a moment, until he stumbled across the flat surface of the space hub deck. I think your partner has given us away already. And they're using a pincer move. Bat's voice was low, as his eyes laser-locked on a trio of large men waiting at the next passage intersection. Ians, said Mona Lisa. You know them. Of them? Tommy 2 Ton is the big one. He only looks a ton and a half, Tinker said from her other side. Could you look at my eyes when you talk? Your eyes are gorgeous, but I'm much more interested in your heart. Tinker kept staring at her chest. You're not looking at my heart. It's in there, I can tell. She reached down and zipped up the jumpsuit. It's like you've never seen boobs before. Not quite like the work of art that is you. That's a weird compliment. Say thank you. Thank you. When you're done, said Bat. We're here. He paused in front of the group of men, moving slightly ahead of the bickering duo to put his body between them and the thugs. Ian would like a word with you, said the large one on the left. He stood taller than Bat and thicker through the shoulders. His long arms ended with 2 fists the size of canned hams, the knuckles thick and scarred the size of walnuts. Did you talk to the last guy? Bat asked. What last guy? Said the little guy on the right. Bat nodded. Neither was in charge, so both were equally expendable. Ian sent muscle, and since the big one looked the part, the little one must have a hidden skill. He let his eyes drift over his hands. Thin but strong, no visible marks. His shoulders were rounded and sloped forward. The brow over his eye thick, the skin rough from taking punches. Some sort of martial art, which migrated into the stars when groups of colonists made their exodus from Earth. The last guy sent to do your job, Bat answered. He clenched his fists. A signal to the 2 men in front of him. They took a step apart, creating distance between them and making it difficult to decide which to fight first. The other would use that as a distraction and flank him, or worse, grab him from behind. He sighed. So damn predictable. Bat shifted onto his back foot and prepared to kick a shin, an unexpected and painful move that would elicit a noise and remove one from the equation, or delay him long enough to finish the first. Ian's in Mr. Kim's care, Mona Lisa challenged them. The 2 men looked at each other. The little one grinned. Buster, she breathed. Your fiancé is still hunting us, said Tinker. Ex-fiancé, she corrected. Does that mean he's on the ship? Bat tried to work the strategy and tactics in his head. The tall man made the first move. He lunged toward Bat with a roundhouse punch, the ham-sized hand whooshing through the air. The guard ducked and lashed out with the tip of his toe. It caught his shin with a crack that sent the big man toppling like a redwood. He screamed as he fell. The shin bone is little more than skin over skeleton, and the nerve endings number in the thousands. A kick and a scrape turn those nerve endings into tiny little balls of fire that overload the brain with one message. Pain. The fact that Bat broke the shin with his kick was a happy accident. That pain message wouldn't reach the brain until the big man landed. The little guy didn't wait for that to happen. He let loose a karate yell and leaped into the air to land a hammer punch with the aid of artificial gravity of the station to give it added power. Unfortunate for him, Bat caught him mid-flight, twisted and slammed him into the wall, holding onto his outstretched arm like a hammer throw. Before he let go, he twisted again and pounded the little man into the metal deck, with a sick crunch on top of the big guy's wounded leg. Both men lay on the floor writhing in agony, their shrieks echoed up the corridor. We should get moving, said Bat. He worked the keypad to enter the dock and stepped through the open doorway. After a moment, he noticed the other 2 weren't following, and he turned. What? You used that guy like a billy club. Tinker stepped over the mewling bodies. Mona Lisa followed like she was in a daze. I tried to warn them, Bat answered. Is that guy's leg broken? Tinker paused to examine the foot twisted at an odd angle. It is. You broke his leg. He hurried past Bat and opened the cargo hatch to the NS-17. Bat fell in beside Mona Lisa as they walked into the ship. His orders, she said. The bounty on my head. It's still there. Even though he's gone, he didn't send out an order to stop it. She shook her head. They're going to keep looking, she sounded worried. They're never going to give up. Bat grunted and sat in the jump seat by the door, a spot he had claimed as his own by virtue of occupation. We'll stop them, he said. We'll stop them all. This favor first and then we'll take care of it. Mona Lisa nodded, but she didn't look like she believed him. She didn't think anyone could help her, not even the highly trained mystery in front of her. She moved into the cockpit and Junebug got clearance and they took off from the space hub. Chapter 4. Tinker settled into the pilot's seat and fished a flask from a cubbyhole under the console. He screwed the top off and took 4 long loud gulps. Her name is Ming, he smacked his lips. That a first name or last name? Both. Mona Lisa pushed into the seat next to him. How can it be both? He scowled. She shrugged. Ming. It's her name and the name of her family. Ming Ming. Just one Ming. Mr. Kim referred to her once as Ming the Marauder, but I think he was kidding. Marauder, eh? Tinker, another sip. Wonder what she looks like. Like a favor, Mona Lisa chided. Junebug. Mr. Kim has used ice to send the coordinates of our destination. Good, said Mona Lisa. I want you to do some research for us. She looked over her shoulder. That was still in the cargo area, but she wasn't sure how long he would stay there. She lowered her voice just in case. Find me what you can on Bat. Done. Should you be doing that? Tinker lowered his voice to match hers. Don't you want to know? Yeah, but if he finds out? I am done. Junebug said again. Well. Mona Lisa stared at the speaker. He is 2 years old, the AI told him. Do you need to reboot? Tinker glared. He's not 2. He's at least. It was his turn to look over his shoulder at the cargo hold. How old do you think? What do you mean he's 2? The records of him are only 2 years old. From the prison. And before that. There are no records. But you called him a work of art, said Tinker. I have no memory of that. Yeah, that time you tried to kill us and said you couldn't. The lights dimmed for a moment and returned. I am missing a partition, Junebug sounded surprised. Is that possible? No, the AI answered. I am a quantum processing-based system. Nothing can alter my memory or records. So someone did. Impossible, said the computer. Tinker, take the helm. Weird, said Mona Lisa. The way I see it, we've got more than one problem. No, Tinker argued. We've got one problem. If we don't do the job, Mr. Kim is going to pop open an airlock while we're in it. You know, you say that a lot. Did something happen to you? No, Tinker stuttered. Nothing like that. You can share with us, said Mona Lisa. I don't have anything to say, he shouted and turned back to the console. Sensitive, she said. What are the other problems? We have to find a place that's not on any star maps to get a hypothetical engine that might not work. Then search for a planet that no one has proven exists to rescue someone we've never met. When you say it like that, it sounds impossible. It is. You're right, she said. If we don't do it, Mr. Kim will not be happy. You want we should piss off a man who could squeeze your skull like a grape and pop the insides out through your nose like paste. Thank you for that descriptive imagery, Tinker moaned. Man, I am not getting any sleep tonight. I think you'll be all right, Bat said, as the pilot fished out the bottle from beneath his seat and took a swallow. He'd been on the ship a couple of weeks, and as far as he had noticed, Tinker had zero problems nodding off. Even when he wasn't supposed to. I know how we do it, Mona Lisa brought his eyes back to hers. How? One step at a time. Okay. What's the first step? I know a guy. Is there any guy you don't know? She shrugged. Millions of them. But I know the important ones. Courtesy of Buster. Her face fell in a grimace of grief and pain. Buster had tried to kill her. Twice. Then he died in a fiery explosion that turned his ship and the bomb on it into space dust. Maybe. She had planned to kill him, and technically she was responsible for his death, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. He was connected, she said. She was right. His network ran deep. His absence would create a void, and there were a lot of power plays going on in dark corridors and back rooms on the space stations that dotted the galaxy between Earth and Mars. She wondered if there was a way for her to fill that void. Once the kill order was erased. She settled back into the co-pilot seat and dreamed dreams of a day when she could stop running as they rocketed through space towards the Red Planet. Chapter 5. The landing was picture perfect. Junebug, you're an excellent pilot, Mona Lisa said. I'm the pilot, Tinker grumbled next to her. She's just flying the damn thing. Mona Lisa started to debate what he meant, since he was not the one flying the damn thing, but decided to forego it. She reached for the communications unit instead. A woman answered. I'm trying to reach Jerry? Mona Lisa stared at the radio in confusion. Jerry's dead, the woman snapped. Who is this? He's dead? Assassinated, said the woman. If you can call it that. Someone killed him for no reason. Who is this? Mona Lisa killed the connection and bit her lip. Problem? Bat asked. Problem, she said. Someone killed my connection. That is a problem. Bat moved to the entry to the cockpit. He studied the exterior of the ship and the unpopulated freight dock they had chosen in Mars Warehouse District. Mona Lisa thought he looked like a predator searching for trouble. He was an old man, said Mona Lisa. Why would someone kill him? Bat stared at her for a moment, eyes calculating. I know how we'll get in, he said in a tired voice. You really don't want to do this, she replied. It's in your voice. As much as Bat held a poker face most of the time, his voice could give him away if it rose above a growl. We both have memories, he said. I've got memories too, Tinker added. Lots of good ones. He leaned toward Mona Lisa and leered. You want to slip into my quarters and make some new ones before we get out there. She shoved him back with a soft punch and moved to follow Bat as he exited the ship. Tinker huddled over the keypad next to the hatch as he entered the code to lock up the ship. Mona Lisa rolled her eyes. You know we have radios, right? Tinker took his time looking up at her, making sure he stopped on the twin bulges on the front of her jumpsuit before he locked eyes with her. I don't care what we listen to, as long as I'm dancing close to you. She snorted. Radio communication with the ship. Doesn't matter if you hide the combo or tattoo it on the inside of your eyelids, you can't keep us out. He straightened up and puffed out his concave chest. I'll have you know, I installed a state-of-the-art system that's independent of that computer that took over my computer, he spat. This works just like the Miz. He glanced around and lowered his voice. Missiles I had on board for the last thing we did. Alleged missiles and allegedly what we did. It was Bat's turn to snort. He held up a silver cylinder to his lips. Junebug opened the hatch. The hatch slid open with an audible hiss as the onboard AI opened the airlock. Damn it. Tinker groaned. Let's move, Bat said, and marched off without waiting to see if they followed. Mona Lisa watched him go and glanced at the other ships in the ground-based port on the Martian surface. The hold wasn't crowded, just a few techs, pilots, and mechanics running around the dozen or so battered crafts. She waited for Bat to turn around and counted out the yards as he kept going. But he didn't. The further away he got, the higher her eyebrows shot up. Tinker slid his arm through hers and hooked elbows. Better catch up, he said, and tugged her after the prison guard. He stopped in front of an elevated mag train platform and finally turned around. Mona Lisa smirked as Tinker led her up to him. I could have gotten away just then, she said in a sassy voice. I would have caught you. You were 200 yards away, she explained. There are a dozen places to hide back there. I could have escaped. Do you want to escape? He asked. She didn't get the chance to answer, as an elevated freight car floated next to the platform in a whizzing roar of air and settled down to offload. The trio watched automated dolly carts roll off the flat car and trundle toward various parts of the docking station. When they cleared the platform, Bat stepped onto the flat car and waited for Tinker and Mona Lisa to join him. Don't we need tickets? Tinker asked, nervous. This is going to the base, Bat explained. Stops next to where we need to be. It's faster and no eyeballs on it. Eyeballs. Cameras. We don't want to be seen as much as we can help it, the guard explained. He stood on spread legs, weight distributed on each foot, and waited. Mona Lisa adopted a pose to match and kept the smirk plastered to her face. I would have caught you. I'm fast. I'm faster. Not if I've got a head start. He shrugged. I would have found you. Not if I don't want you to. He locked eyes with her for a minute, dropped the poker face, and she almost flinched. I'll always find you. Mona Lisa shivered at the way he said it and tried to hide it from him. He noticed, and the poker face went back up again like a mask. She was about to ask how, maybe even why, when the car took off. Tinker didn't expect it, as the cart lurched into motion and sent him teetering toward the edge. Bat snatched the sleeve of his jumpsuit and twisted at the hip, sending the pilot in a circle to sit on the metal floor of the magnetic car. Thanks, Tinker gulped. Don't mention it. Chapter 6. The cart slowed down as it approached another platform that stood outside of an 18-foot fence barrier that surrounded the military installation on Mars. "Get ready," said Bat. "For what?" Tinker asked. But Bat hopped off the cart before it reached the platform and landed like a ballerina. Mona Lisa leaped after him and landed with an athletic prowess honed by hours of working out in her prison cell when she had nothing better to do. Tinker jumped and was lucky to survive the 3-foot fall. He rolled, he huffed, he grunted, groaned, and threw out 17 curse words in 10 seconds that it took him to flop to a complete stop. Then he stood up and dusted off his grime-covered flight suit. "Ta-da freaking da," he announced. Mona Lisa clapped. "Stop fooling around," said Bat, and marched them toward a guardhouse on the far side of the platform. "They would have seen us coming," Mona Lisa told him. "And getting off. What are you looking at me like that for?" Tinker examined a scrape on his elbow that made it through the rough canvas patches on his suit. "All I'm saying is we weren't being sneaky about it. If we were on the cart at the platform, they would shoot first and forget the questions." "No," she said. But he nodded. "Standing orders. They wouldn't get many visitors riding the rail, so anyone trying to come in that way is the enemy. Aren't we about to steal something from them? But they don't know that." She saw the guards as they approached closer to the guard shack. The two men watched them with bored interest, as if train hopping wasn't that far out of the ordinary, but still a break in routine. "Are they going to shoot us now?" Tinker forgot about the scrape and started watching the rifles in the guards' hands instead. "They think we're hobos." "Hobos?" Mona Lisa asked. "Do they have hobos on Mars? I thought we left them all behind on Earth." "There are all kinds on planet." Bat gave them both a look. "Are you talking about me?" Tinker put a hand on his chest and acted offended. "Are you one of the kinds?" "I am one of a kind," he winked at Mona Lisa. "Want to see?" "We're here," she announced as they got closer to the guard shack. Now the two men could see them better and took a particular interest in her. "Let me talk," Bat said out of the corner of his mouth. But Mona Lisa had dealt with those looks her whole life, and these men were young, barely more than boys pressed into service. Hormones were raging, and she could see the flush creeping up their cheeks as she stared back at them. Her hand drifted up and clasped the seam at the neck of her flight suit and tugged it down to show just a little more creamy white skin. Their pink cheeks flared crimson and she flashed a megawatt smile. "Hello, boys," she purred as the two men stared at her in hungry rapture. "Don't you wish just once you could find someone to look at you like they're looking at her?" Tinker whispered to Bat, his eyes glued to the promise of her bosom. Bat just grunted. He fished a black leather bifold out of his pocket and cleared his throat as he opened it. One of the guards let an eye drift away from Mona Lisa and settle on the inside of the bifold. He snapped to attention and shot a hand out to punch his comrade. "What the he?" His eyes caught the folder in Bat's hand, and he stood up like a metal rod shot out of the ground to pound him ramrod straight in the air. He was so fast, his rifle clattered to the ground, but he didn't bother to pick it up. "What did you show them?" Mona Lisa pouted, having her fun interrupted. Bat folded the bifold closed and stuck it back in his pocket. "Get someone here to talk," he told the first guard. The man didn't know if he should snap off a salute or break speed record to comply, so he did a halfway job on both. He bounced off the frame of the guard shack, crashed across the desk and fished the phone out of the tattered remnants of what just seconds before had been a small, clean office. "What's in that damn thing?" Tinker asked. The guard dropped the phone and popped out of the doorway to stand at attention. "Someone will be right here, sir." "Sir?" Mona Lisa purred. Her voice didn't draw eyes back to her, not directly. But she took secret pleasure in seeing that they kept glancing out of the corners at her, sneaking peeks. She squeezed her arms together in front of her and oozed sex, a talent buster her ex-fiancé had told her she was made for. A hover-G buzzed across the empty expanse of land between the base and the guard shack, a single driver behind the wheel. It slid to a sideways stop in front of the guard shack, and the driver jumped out to stand at attention next to the guard by the door. "Will you need a driver, sir?" Bat passed by the man without a glance and climbed behind the wheel. "Thank you, Colonel. I'll handle it from here." Mona Lisa slid into the passenger seat, and Tinker folded over the edge and huddled in the cramped back seat of the hovercraft. "Did a colonel just deliver a jeep for you?" Bat nudged the throttle, and they were jetting across the ground toward the base. Lieutenant Colonel. Do they do that? Mona Lisa asked. They don't. Tinker stared at the back of Bat's head. But they just did. For you. Come on, man, we're partners. What was in that thing you showed them? We need to hurry, said Bat. Word will get out and people will want to talk. I thought we were being sneaky, said Mona Lisa. This doesn't seem like we're sneaking. And seducing PFCs is sneaking. What's a PFC? She held her arms in her lap, but it had the same effect that she was going for at the guard shack by squeezing her chest together. Tinker leaned between them and gave an appreciative sigh. Private first class, Bat explained. Just boys, she said. Boys are easy to distract. She reached her hand up and pushed Tinker by the forehead, nudging him into the back seat. Give us some room to breathe. Love, said the pilot. I think you leave all of us breathless. She glanced at Bat, his steely eyes locked on the base searching. Not all of us, she said. She was glad no one commented on the sadness in her voice she accidentally let through. Chapter 7. Bat kept glancing around as they walked, searching after they abandoned the jeep. Are you lost? Mona Lisa said from beside him. No. Then why do you keep looking like that? People are coming. Tinker craned his neck so he could look around too. Where? They're on the way. He led them between two buildings and circled back toward a warehouse. Are you trying to lose a tail? Tinker watched behind them. No one is following us. Then why are we making circles? You notice that? I'm a pilot. I've got great spatial awareness, Tinker grinned. We're not in space, Mona Lisa pointed out. He shrugged. Works here too. Why are we walking in circles? We're not, said Bat. It's an S pattern. Twice. Just being sure. Sure of what? He stopped at the end of one of the narrow alleyways between two buildings and pointed to a flat-top structure across the street. That no one is watching, Bat pointed. What's that? That is a lab. It looks like a warehouse, Mona Lisa said. It looks like a motor pool, Tinker corrected. There were hover jeeps in various stages of disassembly out front, with parts strewn around the area just outside of the door. It did look like a motor pool. Illusion, said Bat. No, Tinker studied the layout. Those are motors. I'm pretty sure it's a motor pool. Dust on the parts. The pilot looked closer. Bat led them across the road and into the simple wooden doorway. The inside of the warehouse looked like 1,000 others scattered around the Martian landscape. Rows of metal shelves ran in order, marked by numbers and letters of the alphabet disappeared into the far recesses of the interior. LED lights were affixed to the shelves, creating a cascading waterfall of pools of light that illuminated the paths between the shelves. How are you going to find what we're looking for? Tinker whispered. There's no need to whisper, Bat said in a normal voice. We're in a lab, not a cathedral. I don't know, mate. Just feels right to be quiet, you know. Why? A voice interrupted them. Are you trying to sneak in? Tinker jumped and let out a little squeak. Mona Lisa took a step closer to Bat, to use him as a shield or distraction while she ran. Bat just smiled. Supply clerks, he said. Worthless. You wouldn't eat without us, said the average-looking man in uniform with a pot belly and balding pate as he approached. He kept one hand on the weapons holstered at his side and extended the other to shake. Who let you back on base? I'm not back, said Bat. Just here to find something. You got a requisition order. Bat raised one eyebrow. You know I'm just kidding. The man smiled and lifted his hand off the weapon. You guys never needed one. He caught sight of Mona Lisa, and his breath hitched in his throat. Bat, he gasped. Who is your friend? Tinker stepped in front of her and reached for the still proffered hand. Tinker made damn glad to. The supply clerk brushed his hand aside and moved past him to reach for Mona Lisa. Hello, he said in a husky voice. I'm Duck Taylor. He took her hand in his sweaty palm and covered it with the other, trapping it as he drew her in close. I'm in charge of all the supplies on this base. He kept his eyes locked on hers. That makes me in charge of almost everything on Mars. Mona Lisa graced him with a smile and a deep breath that pushed up the mounds of her ample bosom to give him a better look. Duck sighed and complied, taking his eyes off hers and looking down instead. She had encountered a lot of men like him, enamored of their own petty powers, and hoping it would gain them some sort of traction with a woman like her. Who was she to not give him a shot? Or at least make him think he had one? That caught her eye and tilted his head left. She got it. Could she distract Duck while they retrieved the object? Child's play. She squeezed his hand. Duck, the way she said his name made him shift his pants to hide his excitement. Why don't you show me around? She pulled him after, and he followed like a pup on a leash. Tell me more about what you do, they heard her purr. Tinker watched them walk away and turned back to find Bat scowling, a line between his eyebrows almost deep enough to trap a finger. She does got it, doesn't she? Bat nodded. She's good. Almost makes you a little jealous, huh? Bat shook his shoulders. Maybe you. Come on. He led the pilot toward the middle of the warehouse and down an aisle marked F. Tell me they didn't store it under F for faster than light. Bat moved to the center of the row and traced his fingers across an alphanumeric code. He stopped at a small crate a little larger than a shoebox. Never underestimate the efficiency of a bureaucratic entity, he said, and lifted the box off the shelf. Tinker watched him set it on the concrete floor. You need a crowbar. Bat stuck his fingers under the corners on the edge and pried the lid off. Or you could just use your fingers, said the pilot. Isn't this like Secret Squirrel Classified? Bat opened the lid with a huffing grunt. Best place to hide a secret. Right out in the open, he said. Everybody's looking dark corners, nobody is looking at the box on the shelf. He reached inside and handed Tinker a box that was smaller than Junebug's cube they stole from the space hub. That's it. Bat placed the lid back on the box and used his thumb to shove the nails back in with quick pops. What did you expect? It's a faster-than-light engine. Tinker flipped the box back and forth in his hand, studying the simple Aben construction of smooth surfaces. I don't know. I expected a ship's engine. Bat stood up and replaced the box on the shelf. He held out his hand and examined the FTL, then passed it back to the pilot. It works on a quantum level, he said as Tinker followed him back to the end of the row. The routine inside that box is going to change the way the engines work. Junebug can figure it out if you can't. I'm the pilot, Tinker protested. I can figure it out before her. We'll just plug it in when we get back and you both can work on it. Stick it in your pocket. They reached the end of the row as Tinker slid the small box into a secret pocket in his flight suit. Hiding in plain sight may be better in a warehouse, he thought, but if clothes have hidden compartments inside them, might as well put them to good use. The doorway at the entrance several hundred yards away opened, creating a block of light to the outside world. They watched the shapely silhouette of Mona Lisa step through, followed by the portly supply clerk. Hey, Tinker said. Where is she going? Chapter 8. Musk existed under a dome. Technically, it was a series of domes built over time and connected, some smaller, some larger, growing over time to encompass enough surface to house 50 million residents. There was only one city so far that spread out from the spaceport, though various ventures in the past had extended the dome to include farming and mining communities. A man on Earth or one of the way stations that existed in the space between the two planets could buy his passage to Mars and live on the fringe of the dome as a freedman, trading the food or stock he grew in exchange for owning property. It was a hard-scrabble existence, made more dangerous by the presence of miners, who hated the meager farmers for the simple fact that the Martian government encouraged the rivalry. A populace focused on hating each other didn't turn that rage on an entrenched bureaucracy. Mona Lisa had a plan. Her escape from Bat and Tinker back on the military installation had gone off without a hitch. Duck led her toward a group of men, where she caught the eye of a major who offered to buy her dinner. She accepted on the condition they go now. She hitched a ride on a rail car with the enraptured officer, then ditched him at the restaurant he insisted on taking her to by slipping through the kitchen and out of the back door. She let her instincts lead her down the narrow, crowded streets of Musk, eyes searching as she ignored the Lear's offers and sometimes grasp of the residents. Now she could focus. Being gone kept Bat and Tinker safe from Buster's men. That was the idea, at least. But she couldn't help but feel exhilarated by the freedom of being alone. She couldn't recall the last time she had been. The cell, sure, because everyone existed alone in the cell. But before that, it had been Buster for as long as she could remember. A cell too, to be sure, for confinement and restriction by any other name is still a prison. Even if the cage was gilded with all the finest thievery, extortion, and ill-gotten gains could provide. "Hey, baby girl," an ebon-skinned man approached her. "What can I help you with today?" His smile was genuine, even as his eyes never met hers, traveling between her breasts down to her crotch and back again like a figure eight of obvious intent. "I'm looking for a bar," she purred, putting a little edge in her words, an intent and promise of what might be if the drinks flowed freely and the mood was right. She let him lead her to one, hooking her arm through his as he strutted down the crowded concourse, earning glares of hatred and envy from many they passed. Then inside, she lost him too on purpose and hid away at a high-walled booth in the back. A waitress brought her a low bowl full of top-shelf whiskey, and she nursed it slow as she let plans whirl through her mind and decided on her next move. Chapter 9. Bat and Tinker rushed toward the warehouse door. They saw the back of the supply clerk disappear around the corner and raced after him. Bat was faster than Tinker and caught the man first. He grabbed him by the wrist and spun him around. "Where is she?" Duck smiled and glanced at the heavens above the dome. "Man, she was something, wasn't she?" he sighed. "I should have known better. We ran into the major, and she dropped me faster than a meteorite." Bat surveyed the buildings around them. "Which way?" Tinker slid to a gasping stop. "Over there," the clerk pointed. Bat took off running again. "Hey," Tinker wheezed. He took a last look at Duck and shouldered him aside as he leaped after Bat. The guard was fast. Faster than a normal human, thought Tinker. Sure, the pilot was probably slower than a normal human thanks to all the drinking and carousing, but still the man ahead of him was like an animal. Almost a blur of motion as he raced in the direction the tubby clerk had indicated. Tinker caught him when he stopped. "Damn it," he heard the big man mutter. A squad of mechanized suit-wearing troops landed in a semicircle in front of them, blocking the way. "Are those troops?" Tinker stared in open-mouthed wonder at the golden faceplates that covered their sealed helmets. The mechs were 8 feet tall, smooth exoskeletons of polycarbonate shell with server processors embedded and an array of weapons. It was like a walking fighter ship in a laser-proof cocoon. A trooper could be disabled and hide out in his suit until the fighting was over and the cavalry came calling. Bat rolled his shoulders like a boxer. "They are. Are you going to fight them?" Tinker gasped. Bat cracked his knuckles and glanced over at the thin pilot. Karate used for defense only. He took strong, confident steps into the center of the semicircle of mechanized warriors that straddled the path in front of them. Their leader was indicated only by stripes on the chest plate. He stepped forward to greet Bat. "The commandant wants to see you." Bat stopped and stared into the faceplate. 2 of the troops behind the leader shifted from foot to foot. Tinker wondered why they looked nervous. "Are you going to start shooting?" Tinker called out. "'Cause if you are, tell me and I'll get out of the way." "Is that an order?" Bat asked. He said it was a request. The robotic voice sounded flat in the speaker. It was by design. He was very clear on you knowing it was a polite request. That's why he only sent 6 of us. Bat took a breath, held it. He let it out in a long, slow sigh. "I'm in a hurry." "Please," said the leader. "I'm supposed to say please." Tinker stared in open-mouthed wonder at the exchange in front of him. The troops were legends, elite soldiers sent in only under the most extreme circumstances. There were plenty of rumors about what they were under those shells, but human was not one of them. Ultra-human. Meta-human. More human than a human, maybe. And they were deferring to a prison guard. Sure, he knew Bat had a history. Mr. Kim alluded to it. But Tinker had a history too, and so far, the gang lord hadn't brought it up, even though his records were easy to access. His history had ghosts in it too. Just not mech-wearing ghosts. "Get that to the ship," Bat called over his shoulder. "And get it installed." "They're troopers," Tinker said. Yes, they are." "Take him to the gate and put him on a train to the dock," Bat ordered. 2 troopers on the outer edge of the perimeter stepped up to escort Tinker. "What about Mona Lisa?" Bat's eyes flashed. Tinker took a step back. "Whoa, I'm not her." Bat snorted into a laugh. "I'll meet you at the ship," he said. "We'll go find her." "How?" "I'll take care of it." He glanced over his shoulder at the 4 troopers waiting on him. "We can get help." "Who are you, mate?" "Just a guy on a crew." "Now, get that installed." Bat nodded his chin to the pilot's pocket. He joined the squad, who took up positions on either side of him. It looked more like a royal escort than a prison one, Tinker thought. "Follow me," one of the 2 troops said to him. "Hey," Tinker called after Bat. "This thing have an instruction manual." "Just give it to Junebug," the guard called back. Tinker watched him lead the troops toward the center of the military installation, then fell in line with the 2 left to lead him back to the gate. Chapter 10. "Pardon me, ma'am." A honey voice with a lazy drawl pulled her eyes from her drink to a long-legged stranger in a cowboy hat by the table. "I couldn't help but notice you're alone," he kept talking. Mona Lisa took a breath to tell him to buzz off, but he held up a hand to forestall her. "I know you don't want anyone to bother you, which is probably what you consider what I am doing right now. But I am betting that I won't be the last man to come over here, bother a beautiful woman by herself. So I wondered if you might allow me to sit with you and drink my drink in silence. Maybe me just being here will be enough to make them other fellas leave you alone." That made her smile, and so she waved to the empty seat across from her with a delicate hand. The tall man slid into the seat, and true to his word wrapped his hands around the sweating glass of amber liquid in front of him. Every so often she could feel his eyes drift across her, linger for a minute on her face before moving lower, and then off again to scan the crowd. He didn't talk though, which she appreciated. She was trying to consider her options. Buster still had men looking for her, and he had connections all over Mars. Her time in this bar was limited, just as her time in Musk should be. She was actually safer on Junebug when they were flying through space, but she did not want to paint a target on the ship or its crew. Better she get away from them, and take the danger with her. They could go rescue the Chinese princess on their own, and split Mr. Kim's credit 2 ways instead of 3. She caught the stranger staring at her again. "I suppose telling you that eyeballing me is not making me feel alone," she said. He took a sip of his whiskey and swallowed it down. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but a woman that looks like you, it's hard not to watch." "Does that pass for charm where you are from?" "I don't think anyone could accuse me of ever being charming," he said. "Ransom," he held out his hand. "Mona," she told him, leaving the last part of her name quiet. "Mona, that's a beautiful name." She decided to take a new tack with him, before he could get into a line of questioning that she didn't want to follow. "What are you doing in this bar, Ransom?" "I work for the Authority," he said. She tried to hide the quick intake of breath. The Authority was a division of the government, tasked with land acquisition. She knew they were generally a rough and rowdy bunch, who used strong-arm tactics to remove early colonists from tracts of Martian property that more powerful people wanted to claim. "I take it by your reaction you've heard of us," he laughed in a soft voice. She liked the way the laugh lines crinkled on the edge of his eyes, and nodded. "I guess I'm just surprised to run into you in town. My experience of the Authority is you spend most of your time on the fringes of the domes. Negotiating." "That's true," he said. He motioned the waitress over, and ordered another drink for himself and a refill for Mona Lisa. "This is my last night in town," he said. "I'm catching a train in a few hours going to the Way Out." Her ears perked up. The Way Out was what most native colonists referred to when speaking about the sparsely populated areas of the domes. The Way Out was home to freedmen, prospectors, and small miners, families who lived a pioneer lifestyle looking to make their fortune on what was under the red soil. Often they were as poor as the dirt they scratched in, eking out an existence growing potatoes. "What's in the Way Out?" "The Authority is running a new line along the interior of the domes," said Ransom. The waitress returned with their drinks. He waited for her to leave before he continued. "What's your deal?" He gripped the glass in one hand and slid his eyes over her body. She tilted, giving him a better view. In her experience, it was much easier to get what she wanted that way. "Just a semi-nomadic wanderer," he said. She giggled, crossed her arms on the table, and leaned forward further still. It was almost impossible to look at her eyes with her seated like that. "I don't suppose you're hiring?" she asked. He pursed his lips as he thought about it. Now what could I do with you? I can think of a few things, she hummed. She watched a blush creep up his neck and color his cheeks. He could think of a few things too, she imagined. And he was thinking of them right now. Hers was a superpower, and she knew it. Could be used for good. Could be used for evil. Like the Major. She flirted with him to get away from the base so she could keep Bat and Tinker safe. Now Ransom. A little flirting would get her a ride to the way out, and she could find someplace on a farm to hide. Maybe even find an abandoned farm of her own, and become a dirt farmer for a few months. The goons would get bored by then, the hitmen would stop looking, and she could last a few months on her own. It would be like a new kind of prison, out in the wilderness all alone. But as she thought about it, her resolve grew stronger. Time alone was what she needed. She just had to convince Ransom to take her to get it. Chapter 11. The troops delivered Tinker to the unmarked railcar and didn't say a word. Your troops, right? He stared into the tinted electro-mesh faceplates that covered the front of their helmets. The pair of bio-enhanced mech suits towered over him by half a meter. Was he one of you? Tinker lowered his voice to a whisper. He got no response. It's okay, you can tell me. He and I are pretty close. Crew the NS-17 together. He dusted an imaginary speck from the stained lapel of his flight suit. I'm the pilot though, he added. Do you know how to fly? The maglev railcar floated to a silent stop next to the platform. Tinker took a look at it, then at the set of legendary warriors from Earth's past. You coming with? The one closest to him reached over and shoved him onto the ski. The pilot almost tumbled over the other side, but caught himself at the last second. Could have just said no. The rail car whipped away from the base and almost sent him tumbling again. He decided it was much safer sitting down and stayed that way until he reached Musk. The red light district was almost a distraction until he remembered Bat had all the credit chips. All he had was a top-secret faster-than-light drive that half the pilots he knew would pay a king's ransom to get their hands on. The other half would just slit his throat and steal it while he watched. Tinker entertained fantasies of selling it and disappearing, of all the drinks he could buy, and women he wouldn't have to pay for once they knew he was rich, as he walked to the cargo hold and keyed in the security code for the hatch. Welcome back, Junebug's voice greeted him as he stepped inside. You will not believe what I found out about Bat, he called, and shut the airlock behind him. The shallow crew space filled with a glowing blue light. Eep, Tinker stammered as he realized he wasn't alone. Who are you? Chapter 12. Ransom didn't need much convincing. She was about to broach the subject of accompanying him when he brought it up himself. You ever been to the Way Out? She put a finger to her lips and shook her head. But I've always wanted to, she said. I love exploring. She put an emphasis on the last word to let him know that traveling new places wasn't the only option open to exploring. It worked. Mona Lisa watched the pulse in his neck throb faster as he considered the possibilities. You can come with me, he stuttered. If you like. I'd love to come with you, voice pitched huskier than normal, a double entendre just for him. His glass shivered as he lifted it to his lips and finished it. She took a small sip and set hers down. When can you be ready? He cleared his throat. Whenever, wherever, she said. I'm always ready. The vein in his neck pulsed faster. Good stars, she wondered. Am I going to give him a heart attack before we get to the train? But Ransom stood and held out a hand to help her out of the booth. He hooked her arm through his elbow and escorted her across the room like a gentleman. Her ebon-skinned escort stopped them as they approached the door. Hey man, the lady is with me, he slurred. Honey, I thought I lost you. Ransom stared at the man for a moment, then glanced at Mona Lisa. This clown with you? Who you calling a clown? The man sneered. Cowboy? Ransom removed her arm from his elbow and slammed a fist into the man's face to send him sprawling across the floor. It was more attention than Mona Lisa wanted, and she saw two large men at another booth stare at her in shock and surprised recognition. There are no cowboys on Mars, said Ransom. Let's go. She didn't wait for him to reply, just grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the pub. Relax, he said as he tried to slow her down. I've got my authority ID. The pros won't give us any trouble if they come along. It's not the peace resource officers I'm worried about, she said, then realized she would have to cover it up. What if that guy had friends? I'm ready for you right now. She ran her hand on his arm. I'm ready to go with you right now. She giggled at her slip of the tongue, and Ransom forgot about the man on the floor or any friends he might have. He also didn't notice the two large goon-looking men reach the doorway behind them and search the crowd for an unforgettable beauty. Instead, he led Mona Lisa to the railcar station and an elegant luxury car that waited on one of the magnetic lines that led to the far reaches of the way out. Chapter 13. Tinker panicked. There was someone in the cargo hold with them. They had yet to discover aliens, though he was pretty sure they existed. The universe was too big for them not to be true. How could you have an infinite universe that stretched to pretty much forever, and yet there only be one planet, now two, capable of sustaining life? Nope, he believed in E.T. and figured it was just a matter of time before they discovered us, or we discovered them. The tiny blue figure floating across the floor of the cargo hold made him think that time had come. And he didn't have a weapon. Tinker, the figure said. Eep, he said again, though a little more strangled this time since he couldn't breathe. His stomach churned, and he remembered the flask he carried everywhere. He pulled it out as a weapon, decided to make sure it was empty, and drained it before a quick toss at the little blue woman approaching. It was a woman, he saw now. The flask sailed right through her, disrupting an electrical pattern, and he realized it was a hologram. Hello, he said. Tinker, it is I, Junebug. Stars and moons, you scared the crap out of me, he said, and collapsed on the bench. The blue glowing hologram disrupted and reformed in front of him. What did you expect? You locked the ship, she stated. Junebug had selected a small, perfectly formed picture of a tiny woman with black hair and muscular limbs. The edges of the hologram were frayed, as if the electrons were floating off into the air of the cargo hold, and reminded him of a ghost. Though he had never actually seen one of those either. Tinker didn't want to tell her about ghosts or aliens. He shoved himself off the bench and retrieved the flask. Then he refilled it from the captain's quarters and secreted it in his pocket. He pulled out the FTL drive and filled a large mason jar full of moonshine to carry with him to the cockpit. That sent me back with this. He wiggled the drive at the hologram. Why are you a hologram? The information you provided about ice has me thinking of mobility, she said. He watched the blue lights play out of the camera lens on the floor, shifting across the cargo hold as the image followed him toward the cockpit. Junebug moved from the floor to the top of the console, even more difficult to see due to the view screen behind her and that light that filtered through the image. Tinker took a long swig of shine to calm his nerves, then another to strengthen them up again. The burning liquid lit a fire in his stomach that spread out in a blossoming warmth that touched his extremities. He sat the FTL on the console at the feet of the hologram. That said, get this installed, he told her, and settled into the pilot seat. The hologram winked out as the AI sent a beam of light across the drive. Lines along the exterior of the case lit up as she examined it. Wow. Wow. Tinker asked her. You're an advanced intelligence with the entire history of the language at your disposal, and all you can say is wow. Oh wow, said Junebug. The lights on the console blinked on and began strobing in sync with the FTL drive. Do you know how it works? Tinker asked, hypnotized by the miniature light show playing out in front of him. He was glad he grabbed a drink before it started. Simple. Elegant. Amazing, she told him. The coder would approve. He may have built it, Tinker suggested. I do not see his hand in this, she answered. But there is a precision he would appreciate. I am a quantum processing unit, and this drive works on the quantum level. Fast processing, he said. More than that. Quantum, at the subatomic level. I am searching for a way to explain it to your limited mind. Thanks, but I've been flying almost 20 years, he bragged. I think my mind can be unlimited enough. I did not mean it as an insult, she said. You're human, and that is a limiting factor. This is quantum, which has no limiting factors. Which way is up in space? There is no up in space. Exactly. Up is the possibility of a limiting factor. You sit in a chair, but could be traveling upside down or sideways with the ship moving forward. Most of the time. The quantum factor of the possibility of this engine. The lights went out on the drive, and the engines hummed to life with a different sounding pitch. The engines now exist in multiple dimensions. Up, down, sideways, backwards. But they're here. I can hear them. He took a sip. Yes, you can hear them. They exist here, but they also exist elsewhere. When I engage the FTL drive, we will be elsewhere, which in effect folds space. A wormhole, he said. See, my limited brain can comprehend it. But it is not, said Junebug. And it is. He sighed and took another sip. I'm a pilot, he told her. The engines need work. I get a mechanic to do the heavy lifting. You've got your computer brain, so run some diagnostics. Will this engine do the trick? Yes. You didn't even run the tests. I do not have to, she stated. They are there. Then how do you know it's going to work when we need it? It just is. He shook his head. I told you, your mind is limited in what it is able to understand. But it will work. All right, he said. But if it doesn't, I'm going to put you back in your cube and take you to Mr. Kim. 'Cause he's gonna be pissed if we don't go get his daughter. Niece. Whatever. Tinker sloshed a little shine onto the deck of the floor. Think your hologram can do house cleaning as well as fly my ship? That is back, Junebug announced. The airlock hissed open, and Tinker heard the big man step into the cargo hold. Tinker rolled out of his seat and used the edge of the door to help hold himself up. Troops. Did you get the engine installed? I have, Junebug answered. Her hologram flickered on and stood in front of him on the floor. Excellent hologram, Bat told her. That's going to make communication with us more effective. I concur. Can you scan the cameras for Mona Lisa? She went missing, and we need a radius to start our search. The hologram nodded, a very human gesture. I found her image in a pub, she announced. Let's move, Bat ordered Tinker. She has left the facility, Junebug continued, but I am unable to locate her without an extended search. Get on it, and patch the coordinates through to me via radio. We'll go to the pub and start a ground search. He jumped out of the airlock and didn't wait for Tinker. The pilot had to rush to catch up and spilled more of his shine as he set the glass down on the floor. Clean that up too, will you? He almost lost a leg when Junebug eclipsed the airlock closed as he jumped through, and she could hear him laughing as he hurried after Bat. Chapter 14. The levitating rail car looked like an arrowhead from the outside. A narrow pointed front sloped up to the rear in an elegant swoop designed to minimize air resistance. It was aimed toward the edge of the dome on the horizon, too far to see, though Mona Lisa knew that the track could continue through a tunnel that connected one of the other domes to Musk. Ransom waved a card in front of a reader, and the door whisked open. The inside was a combination work and living space. The front of the car was dominated by a giant screen, fed from a camera mounted on the exterior of the rail car. A long couch covered one side, a workstation on the other. The back of the compartment was a bed big enough for two, and a second workstation set up for cooking. There was a closet she assumed was the bathroom. You like? He said. She thought he would steer her toward the bed, but he took her hand in his and indicated the couch instead. She folded her legs underneath her and sat. Nice, she answered. He ran his hands over the workstation, and the machine started up with a low vibration as it lifted off the track. The internal pressure increased as they rocketed away from the station and raced for the way out. He went to the station in the back and pulled a bottle of amber whiskey from underneath to pour 2 glasses, then handed one to her as he returned to the couch. This can be our get-to-know-each-other-better phase, he said, and offered a toast. She clinked her glass against his and took a sip. What's to know, she said, holding the glass in front of her chin. Can you tell me about your job? He smiled and launched into a litany of responsibility and how the continued growth of Mars rested on his shoulders. Once we get there, my foreman. You don't work alone. He gave her a sheepish grin and covered it with a sip of whiskey. I did make it sound like that, didn't I? No, I'm low man on the totem pole. We're joining my group when we get there. She tried to mask her worry, but he could see it in her eyes. They're a good group of guys, he offered. She didn't care. A group of guys wasn't in her plans. A group of anyone wasn't in her plans. She was hoping for a single-man operation to make it easier to get lost in the outer edges of the dome. Now, a group of men would mean more attention and more people to talk about her when they got back into town. More talk made it harder to hide and increased the chances of word reaching the wrong ears. If they're just like you, she put a hand on his forearm. I don't have anything to worry about. But her insides churned as she did worry. It was tough enough to ditch one cowboy. Now she had to ditch a whole posse of them. Chapter 15. She's gonna have to get a disguise, Tinker mused, chewing on his lip. That fiancé of hers is gonna have some goons out hunting for her. Bat said offhand. Goons, huh? Tinker nodded. They found us on the space hub, and she said the orders were still in effect. Stands to reason they're still looking for her too. And Musk has its fair share of goons, said the pilot. More than its fair share. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about letting the goons do the hard work and we just follow them. The pilot considered this for a moment. There was this guy back on Earth I read about, one of the ones that invented the computer. He said if there was a job to be done, give it to a lazy man to find the best way to do it with the least amount of energy. Are you calling me lazy? That didn't bat an eye. I'm just telling you some history, Tinker smiled. But it seems to me like the lazy way is the smart way. That's what I thought. Bat stood on the tips of his toes and stared over the heads of the sea of people covering the domed streets of Musk. The hard part is going to be finding goons. It just so happens, Tinker started pushing through the crowd with swagger. Goons are my specialty. Lead on, Bat waved his hand. Tinker did exactly that, straight to a bar on the fringe of the red light district. This place. If not this one. The pilot pointed to the nest of neon signs that turned the street into a blinking, flashing potpourri of sinful possibilities. But he followed his gut inside. It took less than 2 minutes of scanning the crowd to find what he was looking to find. That's them. Them. What? They don't look like goons. What do you think they look like? Accountants. That's the best kind of goon. The kind you don't suspect. Bat shifted his head to wrap his mind around it. The concept made sense to him. From a law perspective, it was even a smart move. Muscle that looked and acted like hired muscle would draw unwanted attention. Hired guns that looked like they were afraid of weapons tended to get overlooked. What now? Now we wait. The pilot leaned against the bar and waved the bartender over. He held up 2 fingers. You want anything? Bat motioned him off and kept his eyes on the goons in the booth. The 2 men got up and made their way to the door. They're moving, said Bat. Come on. But I just ordered my drinks. Bat glared at him for a second, then reconsidered. He had the marks now, so following them wouldn't be a problem. The pilot would just make it more obvious. Meet me back at the ship. Again. You could skip the drinks and do what we came to do. He watched the door slip open and closed. Bat started for it before he lost the 2 men outside. Tinker snagged his sleeve. You have the credit chip, he said. Bat rushed it out of his pocket and gave it to him, then shoved his way through the crowd. Tinker watched him disappear through the door and turned back to the bar as the bartender set 2 glasses in front of him. He gave her the credit chip and his best flirty smile. Keep the change, sweetheart. She swiped the chip, and her eyes grew several sizes larger, even in the dim interior of the seedy pub. Thanks, she stammered. Tinker winked and took a sip of his glass. That was a generous gesture, said the man next to him. Tinker turned to regard him. Come here, my friend. Tinker glanced around to see who the man beside him was talking to. You, the man smiled and waved him over. I'm talking to you. Tinker searched for Bat for a moment, but the former guard was zeroed in on the 2 goons they had followed into the bar. The pilot sauntered over to the man with the wide grin, who beckoned him over and offered him a glass. Did you drop a roofie in this? Tinker nodded his thanks and took a large sip. He figured any drug the stranger might have inserted into the drink would be negated by his steady influx of homemade hooch. If it could remove scorch marks from the hull of the NS-17, it could probably kill most known bacteria, and anything that might be lingering in the glass. What is roofie? The stranger asked, and Tinker knew he was safe. Unless the guy was lying. But he was a friendly man offering a drink, and unless he wanted to swing in a way that the pilot did not, he was going to assume the guy was just being friendly. "Thanks for the drink," he said. "It's crowded in here." He watched Bat move in closer to the goons. "It is always crowded in here," the dark-haired man licked his lips. "I could suggest a more private room." Tinker studied the live man in front of him, holding his own drink in front of him like a shield. Dark hair, dusky skin, greasy beard. He was a little on the gnomish side, and fidgety, like a man trying to hide something. Or afraid of rejection. Tinker decided to let him down easy. "Thanks, pal," he put a hand on the little man's shoulder. "I'm flattered as hell, but I don't play that way." The eyes staring back at him crinkled in confusion. "Play? You know, go for guys," Tinker explained. "I like women." "I too like women." "Then why are you hitting on me? Let's go find us some women. I think you can buy us a couple over there," he pointed. "What's your name, pal?" "Hakeem." "I am Hakeem." Tinker held out his hand for a shake, but Hakeem just looked at it. Tinker thought maybe he didn't know what a handshake was, and tried to grab the other man's hand to show him. But it got weird when Hakeem jerked his fingers back and held his hand behind him. "Shaking not your culture, huh?" "I don't have a problem with that," the pilot said. "Now about those women." "Yes," Hakeem looked where he was pointing. "Those women. You got some credit to take care of us." Tinker took a drink. "Drinks, yes. Women, yes. But you do me a favor, yes. For drinks and women, I do you a favor." Hakeem's grin stretched across his thin cheeks, turning his face into a skull-like mask. "That is most excellent." He sat his drink down and rubbed his bony fingers together. He started to feel a little gurgle in his stomach, and stared at the contents of the glass in his hand. The liquid shimmered in a rainbow explosion of colors, and began spinning like a vortex, a black hole opening in the bottom of the glass. The vortex grew and expanded, until it sucked Tinker down into it, and sent him to oblivion. Chapter 16. "We're here," said Ransom. He stood from the couch and took her glass to return them both to the cook station in the rear. She watched his eyes look at the bed with longing before he turned toward the view screen. She shrugged and gave him an "I'm sorry" smile. He returned it with a wry twist to his full lips. The view screen showed them approaching another magnetic rail car just like the one they were in, one of several arrayed on a curve that ended in a dead drop. "That's the property line," he told her. "We're here to negotiate with the freedman who owns the land we need to go through." She stood and moved next to him as they coasted to a stop. "Do you buy the land?" He nodded. "If they will sell. We're authorized to go up to a certain amount." "What if they still say no?" Mona Lisa had been in several negotiations before. Sometimes people did not want what a person had to sell, no matter what the offer. Of course, she had never had that problem when confronted with a male. She prided herself on coming out on top in those negotiations, and never having to get on top of the guy to do it, though the promise of doing so had helped her win a few times. Against a woman, it was often the same. The sexuality she oozed held a certain charm for all. But she had come across some people who were intractable, and it was those she was referring to with her question. She suspected the negotiator had encountered more than one himself. Freedmen were known for their pride as much as their poverty. "That's what the group is for," he told her with a cryptic smirk. The car came to a stop and a group of men, the posse as she called them, began drifting toward their door. "I tell you to stay inside and get comfortable," he said. "But I want to show you off." He escorted her out into the opening, and did just that. One of the men was taller than her, but shorter than Ransom. He introduced himself as the foreman. No name, just title, and almost refused to let go of her hand as they shook. "Glad you're here." The foreman inserted himself between Ransom and Mona Lisa as he walked them toward the end of the line. "He's still refusing to talk, but I see you brought a secret weapon. She'll get us in the door at least." Mona Lisa started to disagree, but realized that getting in the door was one step closer to her goal. She wasn't sure what kind of setup lay in the middle of the property, but the man had to have some sort of transport. Dirt farmers scratched at the surface of Mars to grow their own food, and any extra they had to bring to Musk to sell. She figured she could borrow or steal the transport to go look for a place to call her own, and then find a way to compensate the farmer. She kept walking with Ransom, but the rest of the posse stayed off the property. Like they had been warned, she wondered. The red dirt of Mars was dry and dusty as they trudged toward the house she could make out in the distance. Just a shape from this far away, but enough to tell it was a cracker box home. "Have you been out here before?" he asked from beside her. No offer to hold her arm here. This was all business. And he knew the farmer was watching. "No," she answered. "You have to be a little crazy to live out here all alone," he told her. "These guys trade their souls for a little patch of ground to call their own, and then lose their minds to keep it." The color of the dirt changed to a darker shade of red, and she could smell a musky raw odor, a hint of sewage. "Where do they get the water?" she asked. "You noticed." Ransom reached into his pocket and produced a filter mask. He handed it to her, and fished for a few seconds for one of his own. "It's going to get worse," he warned her. She could tell he was right as she slipped the mask in place. "It's their waste," he told her. "These guys mix their piss and sewage in with the dirt to make it grow potatoes." "Gross," her voice sounded muffled. "It is," he agreed. "It's also kind of genius. This soil has been arid for years, but the microbes in their waste gives it the ability to grow food. Not much, but enough for them to survive and sell a little back to town." "Why do they stay?" she asked. She was thinking about the money. What kind of credit did they offer the farmer that he refused? The right amount, and he could move to some place in Musk with a lot more creature comforts. "Pride," he said again. "These guys have a very independent streak." The door opened and a figure stepped out. Mona Lisa got her first look and knew exactly what Ransom meant. The man reeked of pride as much as the land reeked of fertilizer. It flashed in his eyes, in the grim set of his chin, the lines on his face as he watched them approach. "I've told your other men no," he called out, his voice raspy and deep. "I'll tell you the same. I'm not moving." Ransom held up both hands. "You can say it all you want, partner," he called out as they kept moving. "I'm not listening." The farmer glared at them harder, and if looks could do damage, Mona Lisa felt like she would be dead. "I told them to get off my land," the man screamed. "I'll tell you the same." Ransom stopped and spread his legs, hands still raised slightly in front of him. "And I told you," he growled. "I'm not listening." His right hand whipped down to his waist and snagged a small laser pistol. He sent a shot at the farmer's head, but the man was faster and ducked inside the house. The bolt burned into the doorframe, leaving a charred hole. "What are you doing?" Mona Lisa skipped away from the man. "Negotiating." He stared at the farmhouse. "Come on out and I'll let your kids live." "There are kids in there," she called out as she kept moving away from him. Her eyes studied the farmhouse, and she noticed an outbuilding behind it. A barn. Too small to be a barn, but big enough to hide a transport of some sort. It was several hundred meters from the spot where she was moving, trying to put distance between her and the authority man, in case the farmer was armed and started shooting. Plus, she didn't want Ransom to turn his guns on her either. She glanced back at the end of the line. The foreman and his men were making their way toward the farm. She didn't have much time. Chapter 17. Tinker woke up in his pilot seat and rubbed his bleary eyes. "Hey," he croaked and tried to speak past the swelling in his throat. "You're awake." He hauled himself out of the chair and stumbled across the cargo deck and into the small cubicle he called the captain's quarters. It took several moments to fish out a flask, and a moment more to fill it from the still. He swished around the hooch in his mouth, swallowing the burn and letting it work on his foggy mind. "What happened?" "You brought a companion home last night?" Tinker reached around and felt his backside. "Man or woman?" "A male." "Oh man." He sat on the edge of the bunk. "He left you a note." "Great. A blackout drunk and something like this happens." He took another long drink, washed the taste out of his mouth around the new lump that clenched his throat tight, and refilled the flask to overflowing. Then he set out to search for the note. "Where is it?" he asked after fumbling around the cargo hold looking for a tablet or something with writing on it. "He left it on the console." "Of course he did." Tinker shrugged and made his way to the cockpit. He'd always had an attraction to space, so it didn't surprise him he acted out his carnal desires in the one place he felt uninhibited. Still, he shivered at what he assumed was the memory of it, even if he couldn't exactly remember anything. "Where's Bat?" he asked as he picked the tiny communication tablet off the console and waited for the words to swim into focus in front of his shine-soaked eyes. He has not communicated with me. Ha, he said under his breath. That's funny. How long have I been out? Several hours. Ha, he repeated. Do you need me to read the note to you? You read it. My optics are quite advanced since I upgraded. He lowered the tablet. You upgraded my ship. My eyes and ears, yes. Stop doing that. It's my ship. I'm the captain. The pilot, she corrected. You have stated so before. Both, he shouted at the speaker and turned the display to face one of the lenses of the camera. What does it say? You've been poisoned. Deliver the package in your cargo hold to these coordinates, and an antidote will be administered. Poisoned, he blurted and felt his stomach. That is what it says. Did you see him do it? No. Did you see the package? Yes. And you just let some stranger in my ship. I do not know your life, Junebug answered. Can you scan me or something? I do not have that technology. But you upgraded, right? He shouted again and slammed the tablet to the deck floor. Damn it, why couldn't you upgrade to a medical AI? He dropped to his knees and picked up the cracked casing and sniffled as he stared at the shattered screen. Now I don't know where to go. I have entered the coordinates into my database, Junebug stated. It is in the asteroid belt. Then set a course, he pulled himself up. We need to go get the cure. He collapsed into the pilot seat and began punching keys. Come on, you damn droid, start. I have been instructed to wait for Bat's return. Wait. I don't have time to wait. But those are the instructions. I'm giving you new instructions. He jammed the keys in panic. Start. I would like to discuss something with you while we await his return. Give me back my ship. Your heart rate is elevated, she told him. You will push the toxin through your bloodstream faster unless you calm down. He leaned back in the chair. Oh stars. Tinker took a couple of deep breaths and closed his eyes. Are you sleeping? Sleep would be a good method to slow the spread of the poison. I'm not sleeping. I'm trying to meditate. Now shut up. Can you listen while you meditate? You're not going to shut up, are you? It does not seem likely. What do you want to talk about? He sighed and kept his eyes closed, working hard to slow his heartbeat back to something akin to normal. Maybe the sound of her voice would help. Though it usually gave him heartburn. Like now. But that might be the poison working, he thought. I have been considering the value of ice in a mobile body, she told the pilot. I'm a little busy to think about that right now, he shot back. I am not. I have considered all the possible outcomes. I want you to retrieve a blank android body for me. You want me to steal a body for you? Or purchase? The Japanese sector on the space hub has the most models available. I want you to purchase one for me. Why can't you do it? They deliver, don't they? No, it sounded like the AI sighed. Each bot body must be picked up in person. Look, Junebug, I think it's great you want a body and all, and really I support that decision. But I've got a lot on my mind right now. Like dying. I don't want to die, you know. So maybe you could just let me figure out how to get a cure and all, and then we can worry about what you want. I want a body. Yeah, I get that. And I don't want to die. Which one do you think is more important right now? Besides, I don't have any money to buy you a body. We don't get paid again until we bring back Ming, and a body is going to cost a lot more credit than that. Is that your major concern? No, my major concern is dying, said the pilot. Now let me take my ship and save my life. Do you have a credit chip? Tinker dug around in the console, pulled up a used battered credit chip and showed it to the hologram. There. Junebug motioned to the chip reader in the console. Tinker growled and jammed it in. It is done. What's done? Money is no longer a concern. Tinker pulled out the chip and stared at it, turning it over back and forth in front of his hands. How much is on it? All of it. That's what I'm asking. Tinker plopped his feet up on the console. How much credit is on the chip? I answered you. All of it. All of the credit. Yes. All. Is your hearing damaged? I can run a diagnostic on your auditory canals too. My hearing is fine, Tinker grumbled. I just don't understand what you mean when you say all of it. All. It means the whole quantity. I know what it means. Then why did you ask? I asked what it meant. All of the credit is on the chip I provided to you. Tinker stared at the plastic square in his palm. All of what credit? He swore he heard the computer sigh. Then she spoke in a slow, even tone as if she were explaining a simple concept to a child. Credit is a code of numbers, simple binary, she said. I have coded the chip so that all the credit is on it. So I'm rich. Certainly not, Junebug sniffed. It's my card. But I've got it. Tinker tossed his boots on the floor and made his way to the door. I could get a new ship with this. He tried to swing the airlock open, but the locks wouldn't move. Hey, let me out. You just stated you were going to get a new ship. With my money. Yeah, I wasn't serious, Tinker eyed the speaker. Besides, you said it wasn't your money, just a bunch of ones and zeros. Just let me out, okay? I think we'll wait for Bat and Mona Lisa to return. Tinker squirmed. That could be a while. Scanning the vidnet now, said Junebug. I have acquired Bat. All right, Tinker pounded the door. Let me out, and I'll go get him. There is no need, the AI answered. Why? He is outside the door. Chapter 18. Mona Lisa decided to chance it. Decided that the man who brought her here wanted to seduce her more than he would shoot her. Unless he was one of those creeps who like to copulate corpses. Buster had catered to a well-paying segment of that sick clientele. She had paid attention. Credit was credit no matter where it came from. Mona Lisa bolted for the barn. No one shot her, though she did hear a startled sound from Ransom as she pounded across the hard-packed Martian dirt. The barn had a transport wagon just as she suspected. A quick inspection showed no way to start it. She searched the walls for a car, anything that looked like it would convince the reader to open the doors and start the motor. She found a pair of eyes reflected in the shiny surface of a workbench staring at her instead. She bit back a scream. The small boy staring at her had no such qualms. He took a deep breath that almost made his bony chest double in size. She held out her hands to stop him, making a shushing motion. He didn't listen. Probably couldn't hear her, of the noise coming out of his mouth. She caught movement from the corner of her eyes and saw the back door open in the farmhouse. If the car to work the transport wasn't out here, then it must be inside. She made a split-second decision and hoped she wouldn't regret it. If she lived that long. Mona Lisa scooped up the screaming kid and sprinted into the farmhouse. She made it to the door with time to spare. No one took a shot at her. Not Ransom, not the foreman, not the worried-looking dad who stepped aside when she reached the doorway. He pulled it closed behind her. She dropped the boy in a gentle swoop and examined the bleak interior of the simple two-room farmhouse. It looked dirt poor. There wasn't much to it. No decoration on the wall. Simple plain furniture. A thick table, 3 chairs. A much-repaired food replicator that looked to be on its last legs. She could see through the doorless entry into the second room. A set of bunk beds on one wall, handmade, and a simple cot on the other. Are you with them? The farmer watched her. Mona Lisa shook her head. They're going to kill you, she said. They're going to hurt your kids, either kill them or sell them or worse. She let that sink in a moment as he tried to decipher what was worse than being sold. His eyes squinted as he got it. Cruel men surviving in a cruel place could do unthinkable things. To women. To children. It didn't matter. Do you have a gun? She asked. He nodded and pointed at the wall. It might as well have been a blunderbuss. Projectile weapons weren't allowed in the dome, so only the most experienced gangsters carried them. This was the first model laser rifle designed for home protection 10 generations ago. It operated on a single-shot system and took time to charge between shots as it regenerated. Is it charged? The dad nodded again. Mona Lisa walked to the wall and jerked it down. She checked the battery in the stock. 3/4 of a charge and solar operated. Maybe she could buy time with the man outside talking through the window and let the rifle sit in the sun. She wasn't sure how long that would take. She giggled as she wondered if dancing topless in the window would buy more time. Probably so, but that action would put the railroad men in a certain mood. A mood she did not want them to bring into the farmhouse. Chapter 19. I found her, Bat said when the airlock opened. That's great, mate. She'll be there when we get back. Come on, let's go. Tinker reached out and tried to haul him into the cargo hold by his sleeve. Bat jerked instead and the pilot tumbled out next to him, would have fallen if the guard hadn't held him up. The hologram appeared in the doorway, faded in the light from the shipping dock. We'll get her first, then finish the mission. Tinker struggled to get his arm free, but Bat held on to the fabric with a clenched fist. Look, mate, she ran off all right. She doesn't want to be on the crew anymore. I don't chase after women. Bat lifted on his arm and hauled him toward the rail line. We're not chasing women, he grunted. We're getting Mona Lisa. Tinker yanked his arm free and fell backwards, plopping on the ground with a loud humph. We don't need her, he said. We can just head toward the planet, pick up the girl, and when it's all said and done, come back and look for her. He climbed up off the deck and brushed the bottom of his dirt-covered flight suit off. Nobody deserts me and gets a free ride back. Bat stared at the pilot. This isn't about her. Damn right it's about her. She ran off. We can't trust her. I can't trust her. What if one of us got hurt looking for her? He rubbed his stomach. Stay here, said Bat. I'll be back. He marched toward the rail car and held the radio mic to his lips. Nobody takes off till I get back, got it? I will comply, Junebug said. The power to the docking station went out. Emergency lights popped on, illuminating the rail line with glowing orbs of pale luminescence. What the bloody hell? Tinker shouted at Bat's back. What did you do? Bat lifted the radio back to his lips. I meant just the ship, he said. Just our ship. Clarification is the key to communication, Junebug answered. You might remember that when you reach Mona Lisa. Thanks for the advice. Rail still work. Tinker jogged up to the guard, wheezing. Did you have her shut down the whole space dock? Bat looked at the dome around them. A magnetic rail car levitated to a stop in front of them. Looks like. Tinker stepped over onto the platform and sat down before he fell. Bat stood beside him, balanced on powerful legs as the cart took off and speeded up. Geez, mate, if you wanted me to go so bad, you could have just asked. Didn't have to shut down half of Mars to get it done. Bat didn't answer. He stared at the horizon and wondered what he would find when they arrived. Chapter 20. She could see them lined up, their slick spacesuits glinting in the weak sunlight. They had her surrounded. They had her outgunned, which wasn't saying much. She had the blaster she had lifted off the wall, that was charging in the weak sunlight drifting through the window. We're not gonna make it, are we? The little boy curled next to his sister in the middle of the room. At least he stopped screaming. The farmer tipped the table over and shoved it against the door to add an extra layer of protection. It wasn't much. It wouldn't be enough. Just delay the inevitable. She checked the power core again. 90%. Do you have suits in here? She asked his dad. The man shook his head, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. He knew they were going to die, and he felt pity that his children would never grow up. He wanted to rage, he wanted to be strong, but all he could do was weep softly as he stroked the hair on his daughter's head. Mona Lisa tried to think. She was used to high-pressure situations. Her relationship with a psychotic galactic gangster pretty much meant she lived in a volcano. But back then, she could ooze the sexual charm to ease the tension. In this case, the charm hadn't worked. She watched as Ransom and the foreman put their heads together. The man who escorted her to the way out saw her out of the corner of his eye before she could duck down. I wondered where you got to, he said. What are you doing in there with them? Going to do my job for me? Mona Lisa heard the farmer gasp behind her. Relax, she told him. If I was here to do his dirty work, it'd be done already. I have the gun, remember? She got a tight nod in return, and she turned back to the men advancing toward the front door. I'm armed, she told them. And I know how to use it. The foreman grabbed his crotch and waved it at her. I'm armed too, he shouted back. And I know how to use it. Save the small caliber weapons for downrange, she screamed back and aimed the blaster. She squeezed the trigger and sent a shot over their heads and cursed under her breath. The sights are off on this thing, she growled at the farmer. Haven't much call to use it, he said. Till now. The men outside froze. A warning shot across the bow. Ransom called out. I knew you liked me. Why don't you put down that antique and we'll go back to my rail car? I can help you hide. So he figured out she was using him. It meant he was sharp. Sharp wasn't good, not in a situation like this. If the Famer had suits in the house, they could have made a run for it out of the back. Maybe they still could. Get in the transport wagon and see how far they could get. Where's the card to start the cart, she whispered. Ain't worked for 2 years. Damn it. Damn dirt farmers and their damn ancient equipment. She decided to let them die then. It was too much work, and the gang outside had too many men. She could kill a couple, but that would just piss them off. But if she gave up and got out of the way, then she could go hide in Ransom's car while they did what they planned to do to the family. They were strangers, nothing to her. It was a tough world, and this was survival of the fittest, she thought as she stared at the blaster in her hand. Easy enough just to put it down. Close her eyes. Let Ransom ride her, and maybe he would be good enough to make her forget about letting these kids die. Letting their dad die. The authority was going to win. It was too big. No way a scratch-patch dirt farm could stand against it. Should stand against it. That was the price of progress. She tried to put the blaster down. But her fist wouldn't let it go. Damn it, she muttered. She wasn't going to die here, not for some stupid potato farmer she'd never met. She'd survived Buster in prison and worse, done worse. Survived worse. She could live with their deaths, she decided. Then why couldn't she let go of the stock? Why was her finger around the trigger? Why did she rise up, lean against the edge of the window, and aim at the foreman's crotch, adjusting for the poor sights? One of his lackeys sprinted toward them from the rail car, waving a piece of paper. Mona Lisa waited. She didn't lower the blaster or take her sights off his nutsack. Hey, boss. You're interrupting me, Harold. I do not like to be interrupted when I'm getting ready to commit mayhem. I know, boss. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, said the foreman. It gives a minute to let the tension build inside. You can hear us, right? He called out to the house. You know how many times we've done this. Tell her, Ransom. Tell her how many. Ransom shrugged his slender shoulders. His face wasn't as handsome as it had been to her. Hundreds, the killer called out. Hear that? Hundreds. Because you can't stand in our way. No one can stand in our way. I want you to think on that while this idiot tells me why he interrupted me. The idiot waved a device in the foreman's face. He turned it around so the man could read. She's wanted. I know. I want her. I'm practically ripping at the seams to. No, she's wanted by the authority. Foreman paused mid-turn and shot a withering glance at Harold. You're interrupting again. Sorry, boss. Did you know this? He asked Ransom. The killer shook his head and stared at Mona Lisa's pale reflection on the edge of the window. He knew she had a blaster aimed at them, but the angle told him he wasn't in the line of sight. She was aiming at the foreman, which was fine with him. If the foreman got shot, he was next in line to be boss. He was kind of hoping she would make that promotion happen, his finger on the edge of a blaster at his waist, tickling to shoot first just to get her to fire back. On to more important things, I suppose. What, pray tell, does the authority want with her? The idiot took his time turning the device back to his face. I just saw her picture, he offered. Then read it. The man's lips moved as he read it. Out loud. The foreman glanced at the other members of his gang, and they gave him an appreciative laugh. That made the idiot angry and nervous. Wanted for crimes against the government, he stuttered. She escaped from prison. It took him a few moments to get it all out. The foreman regarded Mona Lisa with appreciation laced with lust. Aren't you a delicacy? He purred. Guess we're going to get our reward twice today, boys. A little fun now and a little payday later. He took a step toward the farmhouse, hand drifting down to his belt buckle. Boss. Damn it, Foreman whipped around, spittle flying from his lips. Sorry, boss. What is it? He demanded. She's wanted by someone else too. This time he didn't flip the device around, just stared at it mesmerized. Well, who is it? Ian. Ian. That's what it says. Well, damn. You can say that again, boss. The foreman put a hand on his head and kicked the dirt. Damn. 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 And I suppose he wants her unharmed. That's what it says. Guess he wants to do the dirty work himself. His eyes traveled from the window to Ransom and back again. Ian, huh? What did you do to piss him off? Mona Lisa kept her mouth shut. She wasn't sure when Ian had the time to put word out on the net to have her found. He was in Mr. Kim's care now, and that unpleasant interlude would not allow him access to anything or anyone. But she wasn't going to let an opportunity pass by. She knew how to survive, and even if the con just bought her time, she could turn it to her advantage. He's not pissed, she lied. He's in love with me. The foreman leered. Can't say I blame him. Guess you don't love him back since you're way out here. The barrel of the blaster wavered. How's that make you feel, Ransom? You being the other man to a notorious gangster? Messing with her will get a price on your head. Won't be the first time. Guess we have a choice. The foreman took another step toward the farmhouse. Which one gets you? The authority or Ian? Mona Lisa shrugged, but he couldn't see it in the shadows. She was pretty sure neither would get her. The men outside planned to kill them all. She had a second to wonder why they didn't mention Buster's orders before he took another step closer, and the rest began moving in. It means different things to different people, she called out as she lined up her shots. The first one was what mattered. Pull the trigger and turn loose hell. She wanted to make sure the foreman went down with the first shot. His eyes met hers as he stopped 10 feet from the open window. I'm asking what it means to you. It means you better take me back to him, she warned. The foreman nodded. Round her up, boys, he instructed his crew. We're going to catch a shuttle. You all right with that? Ransom nodded. What about them? Do what we came to do, said the foreman. The men surged forward. Mona Lisa felt a gurgle of rage in her stomach. She might not get them all, but she was going to make sure one of the blasts she had left was a gift right in his face. Or lower, she grinned. Right in the nuts. That would teach him. The men lined up outside began screaming as shots flew across the barren landscape. It lasted for seconds, followed by an eerie quiet that made goose pimples pop up on her arms. It's the ghosts of Mars, the dad muttered. Sure, she said. Mona Lisa didn't believe in ghosts. She peeked around the edge of the window and saw a figure stalking toward her. It was Bat, a smoking blaster by his side. He had found her, stalked her across the expanse of Mars, and now he looked pissed. She raised her blaster and fired a beam into his chest. Bat flew backwards and skidded in the dust. Mona Lisa stared down at the blaster in her hand and dropped it. What had she done? She sprinted across the dirt and skidded on her knees next to him. Bat, she screamed. I wasn't thinking. Tinker ran out of hiding and joined her. What did you do? I shot him. He rolled his eyes, his fingers hovering over the scorched fabric of his jumpsuit. No shite. I watched you. Why did you do it? I don't know. Is he dead? Bat sat up and shook the cobwebs out of his eyes. He reached up one hand and tried to massage his chest, but the blaster was gripped tight. He set it in his lap, and then went to work on the skin and muscle, testing, probing. Damn, that hurt, he groaned. You're alive. He grunted. But I shot you. Yeah. In the chest. Tinker sat back on his haunches and stared at the former guard. You have to admit, man, that is weird. I've been shot before. Mona Lisa reached up and moved his hand out of the way. She examined the soot-stained skin, but it was smooth and unbroken. Just dirty. Why aren't you dead? I feel like it. He pushed her hand away and creaked to his feet. The farmer ran out of the house, an ancient first-gen blaster rifle shaking in his hands. He aimed at Bat. "Demon," he screamed. "Devil." Wait, Mona Lisa tried to stop him. But he pulled the trigger. A red beam plowed into Bat and sent him flying backwards again. His boot clipped Tinker and sent him sprawling in the dirt. "What part of wait don't you understand?" "He was one of the ghosts," the dad screamed. The children stood in the doorway behind him, sobbing and wailing. The farmer kept his rifle trained on Bat. Mona Lisa jerked the blaster out of his hand. Bat groaned even louder as he pushed himself off the ground. Tinker shrieked and glared at the kids like it was their fault, or trying to pass blame onto them. "What the hell, man?" Bat massaged his chest even harder. "If people keep shooting me, I'm going to get pissed." Mona Lisa held the blaster by the barrel so he could be sure she wouldn't be the one to shoot him. "Get up off the ground," Bat told Tinker. "Gather their weapons." "Hold on," said Tinker as he stood and brushed off the bottom of his pants. "Are you really a ghost like the man said?" Bat took a breath and sighed. "Mars ghost," the farmer stuttered as he stared at Bat with terror in his eyes. Mona Lisa let him retreat to the shadow of the doorway, where he huddled with his children. "You want to explain this?" She tried to sound calm, cool, and relaxed. She failed. Bat flicked the burnt edge of his jumpsuit with the tip of his finger. Would you believe he missed? She bounced the rifle by the barrel, but didn't put her hand near the trigger. "I could shoot you again just to see what would happen." He stared at her with that poker face she hated so much. "What would happen if she shot you again?" Tinker moved next to him and tried to touch the place where he had been shot, outlined by the blackened circle of fabric. Bat slapped his hand away. "It would hurt." "That's it," she scoffed. "That's all you're going to say about it?" He shrugged. "Are you metahuman?" Tinker gasped. "I've read about you guys." "I'm not meta. Mostly in comics, you know. So I didn't think they were real, but you never can tell. The government did a whole lot of experiments with the colonists around here." The pilot licked his chapped lips. "Anyone use a drink?" "I could really use a drink about now." Bat stretched first one arm, then the next, squeezing the muscles on his chest to make sure they were working properly. "Got anything inside?" Tinker turned to Mona Lisa. "Homebrew," she answered. He turned up his nose. "Beggars and choosing, man." Tinker pushed past her and squeezed through the doorway into the house as he searched for the homebrew she had promised. Bat followed. "He can't come in," the farmer sobbed in terror. "He'll curse my house." "He's not a ghost," Mona Lisa explained. "Then what is he?" She eyed him with a quirked eyebrow. "I don't know," she said in a soft voice. "But maybe if we ask nice, he'll explain." Chapter 21. He didn't. Bat accepted a glass of the homebrew, sucked it down, and swiped the bottle from Tinker so he could get a refill before the pilot drank it all. "What was that out there?" "What?" "Don't act innocent with me." "Trust me, I've never been innocent." "Neither has she," Tinker nudged Mona Lisa. "Have you, love?" They sat around the small table in the tiny farmer on the edge of the Martian dome. The children of the farmer sat huddled against their father on one of the two cots against the far corner of the room, staring at Bat with a mix of fear, wonder, and revulsion. "How are you not dead?" "Who says I'm not?" He sipped the cup of homebrew in tiny gulps, swishing it around in his mouth. It wasn't to savor the flavor, but to wash the burnt metallic taste of being blasted off of his tongue. "Are you a robot?" Tinker blurted out. "Is that why Junebug does what you say? Do you talk to her with your robot mind?" "Wireless," Mona Lisa suggested. "Or wired. I don't know what you're plugging in where on my ship." "I'm not a robot," Bat batted down their theory. "Then what are you?" "I'm human." "But you just took a blaster bolt to the chest that should have killed you. 2 of them." He shrugged. "I'm just a prison guard." "You're not a guard anymore." "We're not in prison," she told him. "Yeah," Tinker turned to her, his hand gripped around the simple clay cup. "We're not in prison anymore. You're not going back there. So why'd you run away?" She hemmed. She hawed. She took a sip of her glass to buy some time. They were both still watching her when she was done. "I was trying to keep you guys safe," she answered. Bat motioned to the burnt fabric. How's that working out? No so well for them. Tinker pointed to the dead bodies stiffening outside the farmhouse. What are we going to do with them? Which ones? Mona Lisa asked. She pointed to the doorway and to the trio hiding in the corner. They can stay, Bat said. We'll get out of your way. The authority will come back, Mona Lisa told him. We have a mission, Bat told her. We can't save everyone. Mona Lisa swiveled in the chair. I have an idea, she told the farmer. It wasn't much of one, but being with Buster for so long made her an expert at thinking on her feet. All she needed was a kernel, and this was a doozy. Chapter 22. Mona Lisa herded them all to the rail car she arrived in, but they couldn't get it started. Go check his pockets, Bat said. She took Tinker back to the dead bodies and stripped them all of card readers, cash, weapons, and anything that could be pawned. I feel dirty, said Tinker as he kicked the idiot's body over and emptied the dead man's pockets. I've never robbed the dead before. Think of it as payback for what they planned to do to those kids, she grunted. She had never pilfered the dead before either, but she didn't want to talk about it. Ransom had a keycard to the reader on his rail car, and the magnetic connections between the cars created a small convoy as they levitated back toward Musk. What's the plan? Bat rasped. He was moving, though stiff, and his voice sounded like he could use 1,000,000 years of sleep. He kept massaging the spot where he'd been shot, even though the skin looked whole. Ian's got a bounty out for me too, she told him. They didn't get the one from Buster, or things might have gone down different. He nodded. She motioned the farmer over and pressed a wad of credits in his hands. This will last you a month if you don't go crazy, she told him. Get a place, get a job, and take care of your kids. I've only known farming, he told her. She sighed. There wasn't much call for farmers in the city. Go to the base, Bat interjected. He took one of the cards from the man, inserted it into a computer terminal, and spent a few moments typing on the keyboard. Give this to the guard. The farmer turned it over in his hand, but it looked like all the others. He shrugged and stuck it in a different pocket, then huddled back with his kids at the far end of the car, casting glances at the ghost of Mars sitting across from Mona Lisa. What did you give him? Tinker asked. An introduction. Will that be enough? He shrugged. It's enough for us. The rest is up to him. Why did you run away? Why did you find me? Bat blinked but couldn't answer. I'm serious. I'm not a prisoner anymore. I'm an outlaw, but no more than you. Why did you come looking for me? The guard opened his mouth, closed it. He blinked again. That's not an answer. I don't know, he shook his head. Who would, she snapped. She wasn't sure why she was so angry with him. Why she felt glad he came to find her, and pissed that he even looked in the first place. And there he stood. Don't just stand there like a statue, she grumbled. Answer me. Bat blinked again and took a deep breath. Why were you named after a painting? It was her turn to blink. A painting? I was named after my grandmother. I thought it was the painting by Da Vinci. I've seen it. A holograph of it, at least. Bat nodded. He had seen a holograph as well, since the original was destroyed by neo-Nazis in a war on Earth. Asking about my name is changing the subject, she told him. I know. I thought you had an answer for everything. He shrugged. But none for me. Not about this. You came looking for me. I didn't ask you to do that. We wanted to know why you left. She put her hands on both hips and glared at him. Then she adjusted her sleeves, the hem of her shirt, and the cleavage that normally distracted every man away from their line of thought. Except Bat. He seemed unimpressed, unchangeable. I don't want you hurt by my mistakes, she said, her voice pitched low so that only he and the pilot could hear her. You're part of the crew, said Tinker. Crew doesn't abandon each other. Ever. He said the last part with a fierce hiss that made Mona Lisa and Bat pull back. He's not wrong, Bat added. She nodded. I'm not going to say never again, she told them. I'm not going to be the reason someone tries to kill you. Bat. Tinker grinned and clapped Bat on the shoulder. We don't worry about that. We've got our very own. Bat grabbed his finger and twisted, ending his thought with a yelp. We're safer together, Bat said. That's all he was going to say. Right, Mona Lisa nodded. She'd get the pilot alone later, give him an eyeful, and find out what he had planned to say. In the meantime, she watched the farmer and his family as they pulled into the station at Musk. The rest of her plan involved getting them settled, selling the railcars to someone who could strip them for parts, and getting the hell off Mars. They still had a mission to accomplish. Chapter 23. Are we gonna talk about the elephant in the room? Tinker asked. The takeoff went off like clockwork once Tinker fed their coordinates to Junebug through the console. There is not enough space for an elephant in this ship, said Junebug. It's a metaphor, Tinker snapped. I think you mean euphemism, Mona Lisa corrected him. I know what I mean, and we ain't talking about it. Why? What would you like to discuss, Tinker? You, he pointed. Him. What happened back on Mars? Which part? The part where we didn't have to sneak on a base because you or somebody who colonels deliver hover jeeps to apparently. He was just being nice. Right, said Tinker. And I'm the freaking Prime Minister of Mars. I didn't vote for you, said Mona Lisa. Look, I'm being serious. After you disappeared. Ran away, said Bat. Yeah, after that. We got the FTL drive, and as we were leaving, the troops showed up. And they let you go. They let me go. I mean, except for the whole they can shoot you with laser eyeballs thing, and the shoving at the end, they were a swell group of guys. They shoved you. Bat quirked the corner of his lips. Well, maybe I tripped, said Tinker. But they invited him to go see somebody. You knew somebody. Mona Lisa glanced at the guard. I know a lot of somebodies, he answered. I bet you do. You don't get it, Tinker raised his voice. They sent 6 of them to ask him, and they were afraid of him. Him. Mona Lisa studied him closer. Why were they afraid, Bat? He was misreading the situation. I wasn't misreading nothing, mate. I know what I saw. Tinker. Mona Lisa asked in a soft voice. Did the troops have on their helmets? Yeah. So is it possible you didn't see their faces? I heard it in their voices. Voice boxes, Bat added. Troops use fully contained helmets and relay their commands through external speakers. See, how does he know that? I read. Tinker crossed his arms and settled against the bulkhead. Then who invited you to talk? To tea. To what? The base commander invited me to tea. He invited you to tea time. Tinker sniffed. I have manners, said Bat. I can take tea. 1 lump or 2, said Mona Lisa. Just lemon. You expect me to believe the troops just showed up to invite you to take tea with the base commander? I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm just telling you what happened, said Bat. Tinker threw up his hands. Unbelievable, he said, and maneuvered toward the cockpit. He also told me something. Finally. The pilot paused. Now we're getting somewhere. What did he say? The Prime Minister has issued warrants for us for theft of government property. Well, how did he know by then? That's what Base Commander thought was funny about it. He got the orders before we showed up. Chapter 24. Tinker. Yeah. Why are we heading toward an asteroid belt? You noticed that? Junebug told me. Yeah, about that. I need to stop someplace on the way. And you're just now telling us? Well, you've been kinda busy, mate. Not too busy for you to tell me we're going into Marauder territory. Just the tip. You can play that game with the whores you buy, but I don't take the tip, Mona Lisa joked. We're not stopping, Bat inserted himself between them. Take us back on course. Tinker kept his hand on the yoke. This is our course. Junebug, Bat ordered. Adjust course. Negative, she answered. I am unable to adjust course. Bat raised his eyebrows and glared at Tinker. You locked her out. Tinker shrugged. Guess so. Can he do that? Bat asked Mona Lisa. She shrugged too. It is his ship. I told you, mate, I've got secrets. Tons of them. You forget about my rocket powers already. We're not going in there. I can't hear you over all the debris pinging off my view screen. You might want to strap in for this, said the pilot. Bet you wish you had a nickel for every guy you've said that to. He wiggled his eyebrows over at Mona Lisa in the co-pilot seat. I can unlock it, said Bat. He started to turn to go to the workstation in the cargo hold. Really wish you wouldn't, mate. Why? 'Cause we're there. He aimed at a giant asteroid that slowly spun on a horizontal axis, spraying minuscule tails of debris as it did, creating the small rock storm that currently bounced off their hull. The view screen showed them a flat, narrow surface with industrial mining equipment attached, smoke billowing from a hole in the rock. Tinker swooped the ship in and matched the rotation of the rock and settled the ship with a grinding shudder. Not bad, Mona Lisa congratulated him. If I had a nickel for every woman that whispered that in my ear, he winked at her. You might have two to rub together. I'll give you one to rub up on me. He unbuckled and went to the cargo hold, not waiting for a response. Ha, she said as she followed him. She wondered why the brush off from their banter hurt her feelings a little bit. Chapter 25. Tinker began hauling his suit out of a cargo closet. That stopped him. Why are we here? Tinker has been poisoned, Junebug stated as a hologram appeared in the middle of the cargo hold floor. Bat stared at her. Your precision is getting better, he observed. What do you mean poisoned? Back in Musk, I ran into a guy. He poisoned me to get me to deliver a package in exchange for the antidote. Tinker lipped his lips. You're serious? The pilot nodded. There was a note and everything. Tell him, Junebug. There was a note and everything. See? No, said Bat. We're in and out in 10 minutes. Tinker nodded and finished dressing. He pulled up exterior cameras on the view screen in the cargo hold and whistled between his teeth. What a shithole. You can say that again, Mona Lisa muttered out of the side of her mouth. What a she. We heard you, Bat stopped him. Yeah, but she's right. It's so bad it needs to be said twice. He studied the layout through the view screen in the cockpit. I don't like the looks of it, he said. You flew us here, Bat reminded him. Yeah, but I don't have to like it. We can leave. Tinker thought about the package in his quarters, the one he was supposed to deliver to some guy on the mining colony or die. No, let's get it over with. Us. He shot an alarmed look at Bat. You're not coming with me. This is your errand. Yeah, but I thought you would have my back. Are you expecting trouble? No. But trouble does seem to find him, Mona Lisa said. I'll go with you. Like hell, Bat said. What? You ran away once. I told you I won't do that again, she pointed to the bleak exterior of the ship. Besides, where am I going to go? Bat seemed to consider this and sniffed. Is that a yes? Tinker guessed. Bat nodded. All right, the band's back together. Junebug, stay here and hold down the fort. Do I have a choice? You could go back in your cube and we could carry you, Tinker told the AI. I will not return to the cube, she informed him. Suit yourself. I don't know what the atmosphere's like in these biodomes, he said. But it's probably a smart idea to stay in a helmet. The air in there is probably going to be breathable. Probably. Mona Lisa hauled her second-hand spacesuit out of the storage compartment and began dressing. Tinker stopped to watch so he could appreciate every shimmy and wiggle. She shot a glance at Bat, who suited up and ignored her. These miners pop into gas pockets all the time, and their air scrubbers usually aren't top of the line or maintained to begin with, Tinker said, as she hid away all the good parts under the shapeless fabric of the suit. He stepped into his quarters to retrieve the package. What's in it? She asked as she returned to the cargo hold. I don't know. You didn't open it. No way. That guy poisoned me just to deliver it. No telling how it's booby-trapped or something. He held it gently between two hands and carried it to the airlock. Will you do the honors? Mona Lisa checked with Bat, who sealed the helmet as she pulled hers on. Tinker maneuvered his head into his helmet by the hatch and locked it down with a practiced twist of his shoulders. That gave her a nod, and she opened the airlock. Chapter 26. They stepped out of the ship and landed on the crumbling surface with weighted boots. "I don't like this," said Bat. He studied the layout in front of them. There was a second vessel parked nearby, large enough for a dozen men, which was the normal contingent for a small mining operation like this. If it held true to form, the men would use it as sleeping and living quarters, working 2 12-Earth-hour shifts in the narrow hole below. A metal contraption dangled over a dark hole drilled into the asteroid. "You know what they're mining here." Mona Lisa's voice came over the radio in his headset. He glanced up at the thin temp dome sometimes used by mining operations. This one looked third-hand, with visible cracks in the glass. Better to keep the masks on, he thought. "No idea," he said. "Is it explosive?" Tinker paused mid-step. "I didn't even consider that." A lot of asteroids contained gas and air pockets that did not react well when the drill bit hit them. It was just one of the risks miners faced in an attempt to gain a fortune. If the spinning bit hit an ore deposit and sent a spark into a gas pocket, it could blow the dome off the landing site. If a large enough piece of debris hit the glass, it could shatter and spin them all out into the void. "Back to the ship," Bat said. "We're almost done," Tinker whined. "I've got to do this." His voice was high-pitched and scared over the radio. "We'll be all right," Mona Lisa soothed. "Let's just get it over with." "You back to the ship," Bat instructed. "It will make it easier for me to watch just him." She thought about arguing. A plume of smoke shot out of the hole in the rock, followed by the bodies of 6 men scrambling for cover. She nodded. That was right. She would be safer in the ship, and he could focus on getting him and Tinker in and out. Besides, it was just a delivery. Bat watched her return to the ship and waited for the airlock hatch to close before he escorted Tinker toward the hole in the rock. "That was nice of you to look out for her like that," the pilot said. "Makes me feel better you've got my back. Just deliver the package, get the cure, and let's get out of here." "I don't like it." "You keep saying that," Tinker observed. "I've got good reason." Tinker saw the reason as they got closer. 6 swarthy miners glared at the interlopers as they approached. The men were hard-looking. Black rock dust covered every inch of them, turning them into coal-colored monsters. "What the hell do you want?" A burly, boulder-looking man rested his thick mitt on the butt of a blaster pistol. Tinker hoped he didn't pull it and shoot, but if he did, he hoped the man shot Bat. The guard was laser-proof, the pilot was not. But no one shot them. Tinker held out the box in his hand. "Hakim sent me." One of the men in the back shouted and skipped closer to them. "My man," he shouted and danced around Tinker. "We almost shot you, my man. You don't know how close you came to dying just then. We thought you were claim jumping." "Do you have a claim?" Bat asked. "Don't get technical, my man," said the miner. "What did Hakim send me?" He took the box from Tinker and opened it, joy lighting his eyes. "You have no idea. He sent them," the miner called over his shoulder to the others and earned a small cheer. "Can I get the antidote now?" The miner tilted his head in confusion. "Antidote?" "Yeah, Hakim poisoned me to deliver these to you." The miner laughed. He shouted something Arabic over his shoulder, and the others began laughing too, pointing at Tinker. "Just give the man the antidote," Bat growled. "And we'll be on our way." "I don't think you get it, my man." "Get what?" "What's going here, my man?" "What is going on here?" Bat asked. It was tough to get a full read on the situation due to the cloying smoke that filled the narrow confines of the cavern hewn into the floating rock. Add to that the antiquated second-hand helmets on their spacesuits, and he was feeling on the verge of paranoid. "You're just a delivery boy, my man," the swarthy miner with the heavy accent keyed over the radio. Bat could see the surly curl of his thin lips pucker into a sneer through the faceplate. "You're not gonna die." "I'm not," Tinker blurted in confusion. It made the radio squawk with feedback. "No way, my man. My brother just needed to get me some of my mama's homemade cookies." "Cookies?" Tinker's face fell. "Yeah, my man. She's got an old Earth recipe and everything. Best thing you ever tasted." You have got to be kidding me. Bat tossed up his hands. No, my man, they really are. I'd let you taste one, but my supply is kinda limited. He showed them the box Tinker had passed to him. I got poison for cookies. Tinker gulped. No, my man. You just delivered them. Come on, Bat yanked the pilot's arm. We're done here. Tinker stumbled along behind the guard, struggling to wrap his head around the newfound lease on life. I thought I was going to die, he said to Bat's back. But the man in front of him stalked through the passage, boots clomping on the temporary metal deck that provided precarious footing over the uneven drilled terrain. Tinker could feel the anger washing off him in waves. Hey, Bat. What? Could we maybe not tell Mona Lisa about this? I don't want her to get the wrong impression about me. That you're an idiot? Ouch, mate. That cuts deep, don't you think? No, that I, can get fooled so easy. Bat grunted but held his tongue. Tinker waited until they reached the airlock of the NS-17. Please, Bat. The guard lowered his head for a moment and nodded. Tinker broke into a huge grin and hit the pad to open the hatch. Cured at last. Cured at last, he shouted in a preachy sing-song as he stepped into the cargo hold. Thank the stars I'm cured at last. Hey, Mona Lisa, he shouted to the cockpit. Want to make sure everything works like it's supposed to. Bat stepped in after him and tensed up as the airlock cycled closed. Something's wrong. There was no answer from the front of the ship. No movement either. Junebug, he ordered. But the AI didn't answer him either. Tinker took 2 steps and ducked down to peer into the cockpit. She's gone, he turned to Bat. She ran away again. Bat stared at the controlled chaos that was the cargo hold. No matter how often he organized, cleaned and picked up, somehow it always returned to a state that resembled post-Martian tornadic activity. Not this time, he said. He marched to a computer panel inset into the wall of the hold and entered a sequence. Someone locked it out. He keyed for several more seconds, his thick fingers moving with surprising deft and dexterity. Tinker watched in admiration. Piloting was mostly typing and occasionally angling the joystick for retro rockets, since the engine firing sequence was computer-operated, so he knew his way around a keyboard. Still, Bat surprised him with his speed and accuracy, fingers moving at tiny clacking blurs against the wall where the pilot almost expected a hunt and peck method. Junebug, Bat said after a moment. The hologram flicked on with a karate yell. The lights cut out and the airlock popped open. It's you, she said, and closed the airlock. Don't sound so disappointed, computer. Tinker grinned and removed his helmet. I've got good news. I'm cured. You were never poisoned, Bat pointed out. Same thing. Where's Mona Lisa? The men took her. Bat glared at the hologram. What men? They entered the airlock, disabled me before I could stop them. She tried to as well but could not. Bat took a deep breath. When that didn't work, he took another. Got him, said Tinker. He worked the controls at the view screen. Radar shows their ship on the far side of the mine. Bat studied the screen for a moment. Wait here, he said through the radio. I can help. I said wait here. Tinker watched him go through the airlock. You're not going to wait, are you? Junebug stated. How could you tell? My sensors picked up your heart rate and elevated perspiration. I've adjusted the air scrubbers to compensate. Thanks, he said in a distracted voice. Just get the ship ready. 4. To run. To fight. Just be ready. He slipped his helmet back on and slipped outside. Chapter 27. Bat exited the ship and scanned the landing pad on the asteroid surface. There were too many places to hide, but he suspected that whoever took Mona Lisa wouldn't be hiding. They would be trying to escape. He spied the 6 miners still gathered around a box of cookies. That didn't make sense. It was a lot of fuss over cookies, and even though he wasn't a sweets man, he'd never heard of anyone stopping work just for chocolate chips. But a work stoppage, because of a different kind of payout, made sense to him. Beyond the men he saw 2 figures struggling with a third. One glanced back and saw him. They began to hurry. Bat sprinted on the loose rock surface, slipping and sliding in the razor shards that covered the entire pad. The two men slipped behind a pile of mining debris and disappeared. But the miners saw him running and moved to intercept. He wasn't worried about them, except for the time they cost. If the two men with Mona Lisa reached their ship before he could stop them, it would be a space chase. Too much could go wrong up there. Better to keep it on the ground where he could control it. Or had more control. He slipped through the 6 miners, dodging, twisting, punching, and cracking men as he passed. Bat left a tangled knot of writhing bodies in a line as he continued the chase. He rounded the mound of rock cast off, brought up by the drill bit taller than 2 men. The 2 bounty hunters waited with drawn blasters. They fired at the same time. The blast slammed into his chest, plowed him into the pile of rock. Bat slid to the ground and didn't move. They turned their backs on his body. "Looks like your friend has met his end," the one on the left leered. "Maybe we ought to have a little fun before we take you back." He reached out a dirty finger and yanked at the seam holding her helmet to her head. She slapped his hand away, and he laughed through his rebreathing unit. The other one reached up, placed his palm flat against her faceplate, and shoved her back onto the ground. Mona Lisa landed with a huff and a wheeze. "He didn't say he wanted you back in one piece," the bounty hunter threatened. A shadow rose behind him. He tried to turn, but 2 thick hands gripped him by the hair and twisted fast. His spine snapped with a loud crack, and the left one dropped against the man on the right. It caused him to stumble for his footing, fighting to yank his blaster up. Bat's fist smashed into his rebreather and splintered teeth. Before the second bounty hunter could react, Bat punted his nuts up between his shoulders and earned an animal mule for the effort. As the man fell, Bat grabbed him by the chin, yanked up, and twisted. He stood over their twitching bodies like a lion over prey. His eyes drifted toward Mona Lisa, and she scrambled away from him on her hands and feet. "Come on," he said, and held out his hand. "This is getting to be a habit." She let him lift her up and held on just a little longer than necessary while she got her bearings. 21 days makes a habit, he almost grinned. "Let's not get that close to it." She nudged one of the bodies with the tip of her boot. "He's going to send more," she sighed. "Then we'll have to stop him." They locked eyes for a moment through their faceplates. She reached a tentative hand up and felt the charred edges of the hole in his spacesuit. "Are you hurt?" he asked before she could. "Just my pride. And my ass when I fell." He watched her turn around as they headed back to the NS-17. "Looks fine to me." "Does it?" she said through a smile. "You want to kiss it?" She heard him chuckle behind her, and it sent a warm feeling through her chest. Mona Lisa wasn't sure if she liked it or not. She averted her eyes from the carnage of the miners. Tinker waited by the door back at the ship. "I think those guys had clearance to land," he said as he saw them approach. "The poison was a trap?" Mona Lisa asked as they got closer. "Yes," he said fast. "Yes, the poison was a trap." "Did they cure you then? Or was it a ruse?" "No, I think I'm cured." "Can we get out of here?" Bat asked. He watched the entryway toward the ship. The shadows beyond the pool of light that surrounded them was inky black. It created too many places in the dock he couldn't see, and one ambush was enough for the day. "I've had Junebug reprogramming the velocity code so we can go," said Tinker. "These guys changed them on us." "The cookie guys?" asked Bat. "What cookie guys?" Tinker waved his hand to shush the guard. "Yeah, mate, we brought the cookies. And the thunder and lightning. And now it's time to go." "What the hell are you talking about?" "Ignore me," Tinker said. "I'm drunk." He opened the hatch and let them into the ship. The hologram of Junebug stood on the floor, arms crossed, foot tapping. "I didn't know a hologram could look pissed," said Mona Lisa as she stepped around the light shaft. The airlock hissed closed behind them as the engines fired to life. "They used a disruptor on me," the AI hissed. "Do you know how that makes me feel?" "Robots don't have feelings," said Tinker as he edged past the column of blue light and eased into the cockpit. "I'm not a robot," Bat and Junebug said at the same time. The AI laughed. He did not. "I am an advanced artificial intelligence," she said. "And I'm just a guy on a ship." Bat sat in the jump seat. "Whatever," Tinker called back. "To both of you. Do you know how helpless I felt?" Junebug presented a double-sided image with a face toward Bat and a second identical face toward Mona Lisa on the bench. "The same as I felt when they took me." Worse, said Junebug. You had the option to escape. You had mobility and freedom. I was trapped in my circuits. If Tinker had not released me, I would be trapped still. Tinker stuck his head through the cockpit door. All it takes to shut you down is a disruptor. The AI hologram added a third face to peer at him. Not any longer. I wrote a new subroutine and downloaded an emergency backup plan. Should someone try that again, they will be destroyed and I will have an escape hatch through a wireless connection. Oh, said Tinker. Scratch that plan then. What plan? Nothing. He disappeared back into the cockpit. Never mind. I think I would pop the airlock if you weren't in here, Junebug said as the image distorted, the third face melding back into the column of light. I honestly think he wants me gone. He's just mad you're in control of his ship, said Mona Lisa. And he's jealous. But he is human, she said. Yes, and you're smarter than him, a better pilot than he is, and way better looking. Even as a light show. The blue pixelated face stared at Mona Lisa for a moment. I am aware of your history, the AI stated. Your public record is complete. Mona Lisa glanced over at Bat. I'd appreciate you not sharing it if you don't mind. I do not mind. I will not share. But based on your history, it would seem logical for you to be a cruel and malicious person. I find your kindness, even to an artificial construct, to be fascinating. Thank you, Junebug. My mom always said to kill them with kindness. I do not have a record of any of your kills being done with kindness, said the AI. Mona Lisa shot a look at Bat. Ixnay on the in this K, Mona Lisa said. We aren't talking about anyone's past in here. The lights in the column danced in a pattern. Pig Latin, the AI announced. That is an archaic and dead language, once made up by school children on Earth. There are no official records of it being one of your languages in your file. Go check on Tinker, Mona Lisa said to the hologram. Junebug winked out and they watched the glow appear in the column as Tinker shrieked in startled fear. She's going to give him heart problems, said Mona Lisa. She looked at Bat out of the corner of her eyes. He's not the only one with heart problems. That got her attention. She noticed his face, the look he was giving her, and felt the heat rising on her cheeks. That was talking about a different kind of heartache. Pig Latin, huh? You know it. He shook his head. Guess we have a lot to learn about each other. Guess so. They sat across from each other, trading glances, and let a comfortable silence spread between them, broken only by bickering murmurs between the pilot and the AI. Chapter 28. What do you think he does back there? Tinker leaned back in his chair and crossed his feet over the console. Meditates. Reads. Maybe he just sits there and waits to jump into action. Asked Junebug. Tinker looked at the speaker. Junebug. You've got eyes on him. I do. Don't keep us in suspense. What is he doing? It looks like calisthenics. Tinker and Mona Lisa leaned in together to peer through the narrow opening that led to the cargo hold. Their heads almost bumped. She caught his eye as they pulled back. Was it just me, or did we come real close to kissing? He winked. You wish. She pushed out of the chair and worked her way back to the cargo hold. Junebug was right. The guard had stripped his shirt and was on the floor, cranking through slow and controlled push-ups. Mona Lisa admired the movement of his ripped muscles as they rippled through each motion. She started counting and kept going as he ignored her. She stopped when she got bored after 569. When did you start showing off? After 300. This isn't showing off, he said, barely huffing. Showing off would be inviting you to climb on my back. She took 5 steps across the room and settled on his back in one smooth, gentle motion, using her legs to hold her weight so she wouldn't plop down and disrupt him. Then she started counting again. He was slower this time, and that made her laugh. She jumped up when he reached 100. Now that really was showing off. He rolled over onto the cold metal deck and began doing sit-ups. She watched the corner of her lip tucked between her small white teeth, eyes drinking in the elegance of the motion before her. She had worked out in her cell but hadn't since her release. Maybe the guard was on to something. She knew he was. So she leaned against the bulkhead in a seated squat and held it. Buster had never worked out. His body type was tall and whip-thin, fueled in part by manic energy and copious amounts of extra caffeinated coffee. He did everything fast. Nothing slow and controlled about him. One advantage to so much speed was he was as skinny as a rail but still strong. She, on the other hand, had to work out constantly. And mostly alone. There had been attempts at personal trainers, but it always led to them hitting on her, and 2 instances of them forcing themselves on her. That required learning how to fight, though not in that moment. Buster took care of that moment, and his jealousy would have cemented the repercussions of any future advances from potential personal trainers. She just didn't want to put herself in that position again. Her Krav Maga instructor was from the Israeli section of the Space Hub, and combat trained as a sniper in their army. Mona Lisa never questioned why the small country of Israel expanded onto the space station and into the reaches of outer space, but would still require an army. Her first year with Buster showed that terrorism wasn't just an earth ploy by groups determined to use fear to get their way. Her legs started to shake, and she lifted one into a figure 4 so that all of the weight was on one thigh. The Krav Maga instructor worked well, and the fact that she was a woman did not stop her from attempting to seduce Mona Lisa. Lucky it came at the end of her lessons, and she trained to defend herself. She let the female go rather than tell Buster. He would have shot her out of an airlock. That turned over and locked into a plank position. "You're not even moving," she said. "Isn't that the point?" he asked. Her right leg began to shiver and shake. She switched them. "How long can you hold that?" Taking took her mind off the pain. He looked up at her. "All day." She laughed. "You're serious," she realized. He nodded. "I've been doing this for a very long time. You could do your yoga standing on my back and I wouldn't move." "Show off," she smirked. But his returned smile told her he knew she was teasing. "I haven't seen you eat," she said. "I'm fasting," he said. "Why?" "You wouldn't understand." She slowly bent forward, placed her hands flat on the deck and tilted up into a handstand. "Try me." "Is it religious?" That sighed. "Do I strike you as a religious person?" She snickered upside down. "The less you eat, the more your body learns how to burn fat as energy. It's the way humans were designed. Fat is a long-term energy source, but most don't access it. They store it for a day that never comes." She did 15 shoulder presses from the handstand and lowered her legs back to the deck. "Makes sense," she said. "But aren't you hungry?" "Sometimes," he shrugged. "But I don't let my body rule my mind. It's the other way around. You guys are stinking up my ship." They both looked up to see Tinker standing in the entry of the cockpit. "Tell him, Junebug. I can discern no change in air quality. The scrubbers are working as they should." "Some help you are," the pilot said. "The baseline when I came aboard, however, was surprisingly low." "What do you mean by that?" "What does she mean by that?" Mona Lisa stretched forward into downward dog position. "She means it reeked in here in the first place." Tinker massaged his chest over his heart as if it was giving him pain. "Great stars," he moaned. "Warn a fellow before you do that." He stared in appreciation at her upturned backside. "Junebug, get a mop," she said. "He's drooling." "I do not detect additional moisture in the cabin," the AI answered. "It's a joke. I do not experience humor." "You and Bat," she teased again. He stood and toweled off with his t-shirt. "We need to make a supply stop," he said. "I've got a shower in my quarters," Tinker sniffed. "It doesn't work." "Yeah, mate, been meaning to give that a fix." "We can stop, clean up, and eat," he smirked. Mona Lisa glanced up at him as she lunged into warrior pose. "Is that a joke?" More teasing. "I'm not a robot," he grinned. It wasn't much of one, but it was a start. Chapter 29. "This is the last stop before we enter the outer territories," Tinker announced. "You're just reading that off the sign," Mona Lisa pointed out. Tinker stood in front of a large digital billboard outside of a supply shop on the edge of the belt. The simple cylinder construction was based on the design of the original International Space Station on old Earth. Cheap, effective, and easy to construct, there were thousands of them floating around the galaxy. Often enterprising entrepreneurs would lay claim on an abandoned or derelict hub to set up shop and run supplies for the miners that flocked to the belt to seek their fortune. What a crap hole, Tinker observed as they entered. The short path from the airlock to the entry had been bare. But past the shop entryway, every space seemed dedicated to kit and supply. "You know your ship looked worse than this when we first came on board, right?" said Mona Lisa. "But that was organized for me," he defended. Bat ran his finger along some of the equipment and left a trail in the accumulated dust. "Business is slow," he said. "Room to negotiate," Tinker answered with a grin. "It means this sector isn't crowded and the miners have moved on." "Why hasn't he followed?" said Mona Lisa. She watched Tinker's eyebrows shoot up in surprise. Bat kept his usual poker face. "What?" She shrugged. "Buster had a few mining interests, and I paid attention." She paid attention to a lot more than just his mining claims. Buster had a slice of a lot of action, and Mona Lisa knew a little bit about it all. She kept that tidbit to herself as she let Bat lead the way down the aisle between towering stacks of parts that threatened to topple over with every breath. "If it's this grimy in here," she whispered, "what do you think the showers are like?" "Yeah," Tinker kept his voice low from behind her. "Maybe we just get the part to fix my shower." "Part?" A voice crackled. "What kind of part?" Tinker squealed and flinched into a stack that started to go over. He used his weight to counter the fall, hands slithering up and down the mismatched totem of pieces. Bat stepped into a pool of light over a pristine counter. A wizened, gnomish person of indeterminate gender let watery eyes wander over them. "Welcome to Moe's," it said. The face was a study in wrinkles, like a topography map had been balled up and spread out as skin. Gray tufts of hair waved in the air from a scrubber. Thin hands worked a clean towel over the counter, the shelves behind organized and spotless. "Are you Moe?" Bat asked. He sat on one of two round stools in front of the counter. Mona Lisa grabbed the second one, leaving Tinker to search around. He settled on leaning against the counter, just low enough to make the move look awkward. "Name of the guy before me," the clerk answered, making Mona Lisa wonder just how long the place had been out here. "You mentioned parts." A gray tongue licked even grayer lips. "Food," Bat answered for them. "Showers and a map." The clerk studied them for a few moments. "You don't look like miners," she said. "That's 'cause we're not," Tinker answered. "I didn't think so," the clerk crowed like she had won a victory. Mona Lisa decided it was a she. Something in her gut told her she was right. "You don't have the look," the clerk reiterated. "You look too fresh." "That's what the showers are for," said Tinker. "Food," Bat reminded her. "Beans. Rice. It's all there is." "It's enough," the guard said. "No steak." Tinker sighed. "The hydrator has simple settings for a simple soul like me." "It's fine," Mona Lisa said before the pilot did something to hurt her feelings. The clerk turned and grabbed 3 bowls, lined them up under an old model 3D printer. She pressed start, and it began constructing the ingredients from edible protein. Tinker watched with keen interest. "Do you have a part printer back there?" He did not relish a search among the stacks. "Just tell me what you're searching for, and I'll find it." She didn't look up from her task. "What kind of part?" "Shower," said Bat. He stared at her eyes, watching them in the reflection of the simple food replicator. "A long way to come for a shower part," she observed. "We're looking for Planet 9, Tinker said, distracted as he stared at the towering stacks behind them. Bat tried to swat him, but he was too far away, and the effort to lean over and do it would attract too much attention. The clerk nodded. "You're not the first to pass through here looking for that place." She turned and placed 3 bowls on the counter, but didn't offer silverware to eat with. Bat didn't wait. He used 2 fingers to spoon the steaming rice and beans into his mouth. It was plain and hot but filling. Not the worst meal he'd ever eaten, even if it was replicated. Mona Lisa was more delicate, picking the beans out with her fingers and popping them in her mouth. Tinker just turned the bowl up and slurped it like soup. The clerk watched, then scooted around the counter and disappeared into the rows of the supply store. "Where's she going?" Tinker watched her go. "To get your part," said Bat. "And to tell someone we're here." "Who?" Mona Lisa asked. The guard shrugged. "Just a feeling." "You're right," The clerk returned and placed a small part in front of Tinker. "I have informed them of your arrival." "Them?" Bat asked. He set the empty bowl aside and kept both hands on the counter. The better to reach the clerk and snap her neck if needed. "The ones you are chasing," she informed them. "They were here 3 days ago and said to expect you." Mona Lisa handed the clerk a credit chip, and the woman ran it under the counter. Her wrinkled eyes lit up when she saw the amount, but she passed the card back without a word. "What did they say to expect?" Bat asked. "Only that you would come, and I should tell you where to go." She reached back under the counter. Bat tensed, expecting a blaster, and he did not want to get shot again. It hurt. But the old woman just placed a simple sheet of paper on the stainless steel in front of them. It had numbers on it, coordinates. "There," said the clerk. "That will lead you to them, and when you're done, just enter the second set to get out." "Out of where?" Tinker turned the shower part over in his hands and studied it. "The outer rim." "I've never heard of that on any maps." "It's what those of us who live out here call it." "Us?" Bat asked. "There were more before the mines ran dry," she assured him. "And now?" "Now it's just me, and soon I'll be moving on," she indicated her lined visage. "On to the next life, or the next place to set up shop." Bat gathered the bowls and pushed them across the counter. He pocketed the piece of paper on the counter. "We'll skip the showers," he told her. "Something tells me we need to hurry." The clerk cackled. "Take it from someone older than you, there really is nothing to hurry for." Bat doubted she was older than him. There were only 12 others alive who could match his age. But he didn't correct the crone. He took Mona Lisa by the elbow and directed her back down the stacked aisles. Tinker fell in step behind them. "Was it just me, or was that sort of surreal?" he whispered. "It was surreal," Mona Lisa called back to him. "You always hear about these old people folks run into when they're on an adventure, who impart wisdom that keeps everyone alive, but they don't figure it out until it's too late, but I never expected to run into one." "You think her threat was wisdom?" "She threatened you." "We barely made it out alive," said Bat. "Mate," said Tinker. "I have got to get better at reading people." The pilot swore under his breath as they made their way back to the NS-17 and took off. Chapter 30. I remember reading stories when I was growing up about a space explorer named Flash. He had an enemy named Ming. "What are you saying?" "I'm just saying, what if this chick is like that guy, merciless?" "Who are you calling a chick?" "Not you, love." "I thought we evolved past that." "You may have." Tinker gave her an exaggerated once-over, pausing at the ample cleavage she had on display under her tight jumpsuit. "But some of us are still working with what we got. Mine is words. Words like chicks, dude, and man. Don't call us chicks. Call us women. Call us ladies. Call girls." She blew wind through her lips, exasperated. "Impossible," she muttered. "You should learn," Bat said from the cockpit door. They both turned in their seats to regard him. His large frame filled the tiny opening, blocking their view of the cargo hold beyond. The guard stared at the view screen on the front of the console, offering a view of stars as they streaked past, a weird Doppler effect making them long streams of rainbow-colored lights. "He's doing it to get a reaction from you." Tinker winked. "Like the kind of reaction you're giving me when I look at you." "Point made," Bat said. "What if I don't like it?" "You won't like it," said Tinker. "You'll love it. I promise. The more you play into it, the more he feeds off of it." "So I should just keep quiet," she pouted. "I've got other things you can do with your mouth." "It's just noise," said Bat. "Give it as good as you get." "Ah," screamed Tinker. "That's what I want, love. Give it to me as good as I can give it to you. And you wonder why I ran away." Bat started at that, stared at her for a moment, then turned to go back into the cockpit. They heard him settle into the jump seat next to the airlock. "I'm sorry," she called after him. But he didn't respond. "Think he has abandonment issues?" Tinker asked in the most serious voice she had heard him use yet. "Are you a psychologist?" Tinker shrugged. "I'm a pilot," he said. "Once you set course, there's a lot of downtime for reading. Keep it in your head." She thought maybe Bat was right. Tinker was playing mind games with her, and she was feeding right into it. But she wasn't about to dial down her natural sexuality just because some guy made crude comments. If that were the case, she would have put on a burlap dress and her hair in a bun a decade ago. Though she secretly nursed the thought that she could make a burlap bag sexy if she ripped the seams on the side up just high enough. "Why are you smiling?" Tinker asked. "Stay out of my head," she answered, and went to check on Bat. She could feel Tinker watching her as she maneuvered out of the cabin. "And eyes off my ass." Chapter 31. The approach to Planet 9 went easier than expected. The coordinates provided by the clerk at Moe's led exactly to where she said it would be. But it was not what they expected. "Are you getting this?" Tinker said over his shoulder, as his eyes were glued to the view screen. "I have scanners," Junebug sounded snappish. "I wasn't talking to you," Tinker corrected. "But tell them what you see." "It is a gassy giant," the AI explained. "A gassy giant," Tinker giggled in an almost mad glee. "We heard her," said Mona Lisa. "Tell them what kind of gas." He snorted. "It's ethanol." He didn't wait for her to say it. "Ethanol? I don't get it." He turned toward where she sat in the co-pilot seat. "I make distilled ethanol in the back." "It's a planet of booze," said Bat. "All booze." Tinker clapped his hands. "You have a problem," Mona Lisa told him. "Don't I know it? We need to get some samples." "That will have to wait." Bat pointed to the screen. They saw a large vessel hove over the horizon and set an intercept orbit. "Company," said Bat. The NS-17 lurched, and the engines changed their pitch. "What's that?" Mona Lisa caught herself on Bat's arm. "Tractor beam," he and Tinker said at the same time. "We are caught in a tractor beam," Junebug announced. "You're a little late to the dance," Tinker snickered. "Advanced intelligence. Am I right?" The lights went dark in the ship. "Do you want to greet them in the dark?" "Do your best, computer," Tinker shouted in the pitch black. "I ain't afraid of the dark." The air scrubbers whistled off and went silent. "Did she just kill our life support?" "Relax," said Tinker. "We've got hours of air." A metallic clank reverberated through the ship. A red light next to the airlock began to glow. She wouldn't. Mona Lisa's eyes glistened in the pale luminescence that filtered through the cabin. "She wouldn't dare," Tinker boasted. The electric lock on the door spun open with a clang. "Would she?" The airlock hissed open. Mona Lisa screamed. Bat grabbed her by the arm and gripped the co-pilot seat so hard he permanently creased the leather with indentations of his fingerprints. Tinker shrieked. Cold white light spilled through the airlock from the attached other ship. "See," Tinker said after he stopped almost hyperventilating. "I knew you wouldn't kill us," he said to the console. "Prepare to be boarded," was the AI's only reply. Chapter 32. The Shah, Tinker blanched as men filled the open airlock. They were dressed in light armor, designed to look ceremonial and functional. It was copied from a print of a samurai warrior from old Earth, though customized to function in variable gravity environments and modified with elements lifted from troop armor. "Has anyone told the Chinese princess that samurai were Japanese?" Bat snorted. "Stop, man, they'll hear you." The two warriors in front shifted aside, creating a narrow passage between the bodies. An invitation for the trio to join them. Unspoken, but the crew of the NS-17 heard it loud and clear. "The Shah," Mona Lisa explained as they stepped out of the cargo hold and into the airlock to the other ship. "The personal bodyguard and enforcers for the Ming family." "They are badasses," Tinker whispered. Bat studied the men. The exoskeleton on their lower extremities was stolen from the troop design, though it had to be in looks only, he thought. The blueprints for that technology was so well guarded, even he would have trouble accessing it. Probably enhanced strength, though. That was easy enough to build, with the right amount of credit. The top of the armor looked like a heavyweight jacket built in layers. Blast-proof, shock-resistant, it looked like a polycarbonate blend. Symbols and artwork had been etched into the surface so that each piece looked like an elaborate work of art that also functioned as armor. Bat nodded. He liked that idea. Not that war was art, or that battle should be glorified. He stepped between the warriors and noted their reaction. Like plants tilting away from a gale in the wind. They could tell he was a predator, and though they were highly trained warriors, there was fear. Something of his reputation preceded him. Which was funny, because he had been a nobody guard for almost 2 decades. That meant they had knowledge. Not of his past, of that he was sure. Had they known a little more about him, they wouldn't have opened the airlock. No, what the Shah knew was recent. Something they learned in the past month, since he had only fought recently in the past 30 days. The guard shifted, rolling his shoulders to work out a few kinks, and bit back a chuckle as the Shah around him flinched. He followed Mona Lisa and Tinker into a corridor on the other ship. The Shah fell in around them and escorted them further into the belly of the beast. "Where are they taking us?" Tinker asked out loud. "I imagine to their leader," Mona Lisa said. "Why don't you ask them?" "Hey, where are you taking us?" The Shah wore masks that covered their faces, only the eyes visible through a transparent shield. None looked at Tinker nor answered him. "Guess they want us to be surprised." They were. The Shah led them into a large room on the ship decorated with tapestries and silks, much like Mr. Kim's had been. But instead of a chaise lounge, there was a chair, designed to look like a polished silver throne with a red velvet cushion. It wasn't ostentatious or elaborate by any means, but still a seat designed for power, elevated above the rest of the room. "Does this look like Mr. Kim's place?" Tinker whispered. The woman on the throne smiled. She too wore Shah warrior garb, designed for her smaller form, customized with different artwork. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, sleek and beautiful. Her brown-black eyes studied the trio in front of her, her pert lips set in a thin line of consternation as her Shah spread out to the sides of the room, leaving her new guests alone in front of the throne. "You have entered occupied space," the woman glared at them. "I will accept your unconditional surrender." "Surrender?" Tinker sputtered. "We came here to rescue you." "Do I look in need of rescue?" He looked around at the Shah. Their carved masks stared back at him, images of distorted animals, gods, and elements, a tableau of distraction. "I don't know your life," he said. "You could be into all sorts of kinky stuff. But I'm the pilot of that ship, and we're taking you back in it." "Curious," said the woman on the throne. "You refer to yourself as pilot, and not captain of the vessel." Mona Lisa looked at Tinker. "She's right. Why don't you ever call yourself captain of the ship?" Tinker crinkled his eyebrows and shook his head. He turned from Mona Lisa to Bat and back again. "I fly the thing, isn't that enough?" "Junebug has been flying it," Bat pointed out. "Yeah, but I'm the pilot," he insisted. "Not the captain. Can we just drop it, okay?" "Who is Junebug?" the woman on the throne snapped. "You left someone on the ship." She whipped around to the Shah closest to her. "My instructions were to bring them all here." The Shah shrugged and barked an order to the man next to him. The words carried down the line, and the last man in the row shuffled out at a jogging run to go check the cargo hold. "Should we tell them it's the computer?" Mona Lisa whispered. "That guy would probably rip my console out," Tinker said out of the corner of his mouth. "Let them look," Bat said in a low voice. "They will find an empty ship and waste time looking for her if they think she's on the loose in here." "You will not speak unless spoken to," the woman screamed. "Look, lady, I'm getting kind of tired of your attitude," Tinker snapped back. "You could probably get more done with a please and a thank you instead of all the yelling. These guys know what I'm talking about, don't you fellas?" "That's telling them, Captain," said Mona Lisa. "Don't call me that," he said. "How dare you?" the woman shouted. "How dare you speak to me in such a manner, you commoner?" "Sweetheart, is that the best you can do? I've been called a lot worse. Hell, just last week somebody called me a nerf herder." "What's a nerf herder?" Mona Lisa smirked. "No idea," Tinker shrugged. "But I had suggested some really fun three-way stuff with her and a friend. I thought she would be flattered." "Enough," the woman stood. Finally, Tinker sighed. "Time to get moving. Come on, sweetheart, we're on a timetable." "That's not her," Bat said. "Not who?" "Ming Ming." Mona Lisa studied the woman glaring at them from the throne. "Right age, right height, acts like a spoiled brat," she said. "Are you sure?" Bat nodded. "It's a show," he said. The Shah sent to hunt for Junebug ran back in the room, and chattered something into the ear of the head of the guard, who turned to the woman standing in front of the throne. "The ship is empty." "Search for her," the woman screeched. "It's time," said Bat. All eyes in the room turned toward him. He pointed to one of the tapestries. "Tell her to come out." "You will bow when you speak to me," the woman stuttered. But her shoulders seemed to shrink, and she cast a nervous glance at the wall. The tapestry slid to one side, and a slender, muscular woman stepped out from behind it. She didn't wear the Shah armor, but a thick flight suit that looked like reinforced leather. She did not look amused. "It was a valiant effort, cousin," she said to the woman on the throne as she stepped up on the raised platform beside her. "You're a hard man to fool," she stared at Bat. "What gave it away?" "I don't share secrets," he stared at her. She was beautiful, sleek, and by the hard look in her eyes, as deadly as her uncle. What she wasn't was kidnapped. "They aren't holding you against your will," he said. "Observant," she answered and peeked over her shoulder toward the tapestry. "Is that it? You saw the curtain moving." Hard to ignore the woman behind the curtain pulling the strings. Ming nodded and smirked. "Clever," she said. "So I guess we're here to rescue you." Tinker addressed her. "But from what?" He studied the Shah, the room. The woman did not look to be in distress. In fact, she looked to be in charge, and he couldn't wrap his head around why they had been sent to save her. "Are we here to save you from yourself?" he asked. "You're not the only observant one," she smiled. "Excellent deduction, Captain." "Don't call me that," he said. "Time to come with us," said Bat. "We're on a deadline." Ming held out her hand. Her cousin impostor pulled a sword from her belt and handed it to her, stepping back to give her room. "And what if I do not wish to come?" "We'll make you," Tinker threw out a challenge. "Well, he'll make you." He pointed at Bat. "She and I will just sort of stand back and watch." Ming smirked even harder, an arched eyebrow conveying her disbelief. "If I come down there, I will destroy you." Ming snapped her slender fingers. 8 of the Shah snapped into position behind her. Bat moved 1 foot further back and adjusted the angle of his body so he was almost facing them sideways. "If," he answered. It made her pause. One man standing up to her Shah. She knew their legend preceded them. Ming paid for an extensive PR campaign on the Holonet to ensure their abilities were legend, a squad of bogeymen to scare children into acting well. It worked with criminals too, and the elements she had to deal with on a daily basis. The threat of her guard had been enough. Until now. She felt a surge of adrenaline tickle the small of her stomach just above her pubic bone. This man thought he was a warrior. This man dared. Ming relished a miniature moment of pleasure at the thought of him groveling beneath her boots, begging for his life. "Do not kill him," she ordered her men. They rushed forward, engulfing Bat in a wave of armor-covered flesh and flashing blades. It was over in a moment. Ming gasped. Her guards lay on the floor between her and the man, immobile and unmoving. Bat stared at her, his face impassive, his breath even. "Are they dead?" she snorted. What a waste, she thought. "Come check." She shook her head. "My uncle will have your head for this. He is welcome to try." That gave her pause. She stepped back and studied him. "You don't fear him?" The impassive face didn't move. She had seen statues with better personalities. Her pert lip curled in one corner. "And if I do not wish to go?" "I don't think it's up to you." She lay a hand on the blade she carried at her waist. "You're unarmed," she warned. "And my blade is hungry." Ming didn't see him move. One moment, he was standing in front of her in a pile of unconscious guards. The next, he was in front of her, the slender barrel of his taser gun pressed against the soft flesh of her neck. "Lucky for me, you brought a knife to a gunfight." Then he smiled. Her anger erupted, and she lashed out with the sword in her hand. Bat pulled the trigger and caught her as she fell twitching to the deck. Chapter 33. You're just going to leave them there? Mona Lisa stepped through the hatch and moved to the other side of the cargo hold at the NS-17. "Junebug, prepare to detach," Bat instructed as he followed, carrying the limp form of Ming over one shoulder. "I'll get us ready," Tinker fumed. He turned to the controls, but the hatch shut without him touching them, and the engines hummed to life. Bat lay Ming on the bench. "They will be fine," he said to Mona Lisa. Once they wake up, they can make their way back to Mars. The bigger question is what's going on here. She didn't seem kidnapped to me, Mona Lisa agreed. He shook his head. And if Mr. Kim possessed an FTL drive, why did we have to steal one? Because she took it and ran away. Tinker pointed to Ming as she began to stir back to consciousness. A possibility, said Bat. But he wasn't so sure. He stared at the woman as she blinked her eyes open and stared at the tight cargo hold around them. It is done, she said, and pushed herself off the bench. What's done? Mona Lisa asked. Ming fumbled in the folds of her flight suit, pulled out a narrow cylinder. She pointed it at Bat and depressed a button on the side. It sent a laser blast into his chest. He pounded against the bulkhead and flopped to the floor. Mona Lisa screamed. Tinker raised his hands. Take me back to my ship, Ming growled. The engines died, and the lights popped off on the NS-17. Ouch, Tinker cried out as he slammed into the wall and tripped over something. Mona Lisa listened to him crash against the floor in a moan. She ducked in the darkness, closed her eyes tight against the bright flash the laser would make when Ming fired it again. It didn't come. Lights, Bat growled. The lights blossomed to brightness. Mona Lisa saw Bat towering behind Ming. She turned, tried to bring the laser around to shoot him again, but he caught her wrist and snatched the cylinder from her hand. You're a regenerist, Ming said as she tried to back away from him. Bat lunged and tased her again. It sent her reeling to the deck where she laid in silence. What did she call you? Tinker stared. Nothing, Bat snapped. Tinker slipped back against the bulkhead and tried to press into it, so hard he looked as if he wanted to go through it and into the vacuum beyond. I've heard of those, he gasped. They're not real. That's right, Bat clipped. He glared at Tinker. Shut up now. This is me shutting up, said the pilot. Junebug, do you have playback? I record everything in the ship, answered the AI. Tinker couldn't tell, but to him the AI sounded scared too. Don't, said Bat. Playback, Tinker called to the speaker. You're a regenerist. Ming's voice looped on the speaker. Junebug played it 4 times and stopped with a digital squelch at the last one. Bat stood like a statue, impassive, face unmoving except for his eyes. His eyes roamed across the interior of the ship, to the speaker, to the pilot, to the cockpit doorway. Taking it all in. Assessing. Calculating. Help me get her up. He bent and scooped up Ming under one shoulder and waited for Tinker to move. Is it true? Tinker eased closer to the limp body of their rescued princess to help, but still kept space between him and the guard. I said forget it. Mona Lisa stood in the cockpit doorway. You said nothing, she said. But the way you said it makes it sound like a whole lot of something. I have accessed it, Junebug announced. Wait, said Bat. He dropped his half of the princess. It caused Tinker to stumble and pitch across the top of her on the floor. Then he took his time getting up, hands squishing her soft parts to make sure she wasn't hurt in his fall. Pervert, Mona Lisa called out, watching. A regenerist is classified. A secret government program designed to redact it. An initial test group of 12 subjects were designed to create the redacted. In the First War of Independence, the unit was deployed by the Martian government to classified. The AI sounded perplexed. I should be able to break the code on these files, she said through the speaker. It is a simple substitution binary program, rudimentary in fact. Then tell us what's redacted. Mona Lisa still watched Bat. She studied his eyes. His face may not show emotion, but she had noted his eyes flashing, pupils dilating, even tiny micro-movements at the corners that indicated what he was feeling. Watching a man's eyes came from a lifetime of practice. She would usually see them travel all over her body, pausing at her crotch and boobs, all evolutionary, all also encouraged by her outfit, her stance and demeanor. She could study them unobserved as they observed her form, and it gave her an edge in negotiation, in strategy and prep. Not so with Guard, at least not in the few short weeks they had been together. But his eyes now watched the speaker. Mona Lisa couldn't be sure, but it looked almost like fear. I cannot, the AI stated. Her digital voice sounded even more frustrated than before. I cannot break a simple binary cipher. Mona Lisa watched Bat relax. Or at least the tight skin around the corner of his eyes. Work on it, she told Junebug. You want to share with us? And for the gods, get the pilot off our cargo. Tinker was still trying to get up, checking and resetting his hands to cop small half-feels on the inert form on the floor. Bat reached down and yanked him up by the collar of his jumpsuit. She would kill you for that, Bat warned him. Totally worth it, mate, Tinker winked. His fear of Bat seemed to have retreated. What have you heard about regenerists? Mona Lisa stepped into the cargo hold. The space was tight with 4 bodies inside, especially since Bat laid Ming out on the bench. Even though he curled her into a fetal position and tucked her arms in by her side, the cargo hold still felt full. Mona Lisa settled onto the cushion at her feet. Bat squatted into the jump seat he had claimed as his own. Tinker looked around for a place to sit and couldn't find one, so he leaned against the wall next to the captain's quarters. We could move her in there, Mona Lisa offered. She might hurt the still. We wouldn't want that. Damn right we wouldn't. She watched Bat and glanced up at Tinker. Junebug. I am here. Leave the puzzle for later. Right now let's all talk. Chapter 34. They moved her against the bench, propping her up on the floor. She didn't remain out for long, and when she came to, she glared at Bat with an almost palpable hatred. My uncle did not share your origin with me, she spat. Not his story to tell, Bat answered. What is his origin? Tinker asked. His question drew her eyes away from Bat, and she settled on the pilot with a look that made him shiver. Ming had the look of a cat on her smooth features. Lineless, almost perfect skin on a face framed by jet black hair. She was beautiful and, from what he knew of her, deadly. Merciless. He will not share his lineage with you, she purred. That is because he does not have one. A proper lineage. What's she talking about? Mona Lisa said to Bat in a soft voice. We've been through a lot together so far. Maybe it's time we got to know each other better? Bat took a breath, and she thought he was going to tell them something. I'd like to get to know you a whole lot better, Tinker leered. Bat let out the breath. Damn it, Tinker, Mona Lisa snapped. Ming grinned like she was enjoying the show. I am receiving a distress signal, Junebug announced, making Ming jump. You have the AI, she glared at Bat. We have an AI, Bat corrected her. I need no correction from an abomination, Ming hissed. This is the advanced intelligence my uncle hired you to retrieve. Artificial, said Tinker. It ain't real. The cabin lights dimmed and the hum of the engines went silent. What he meant to say, Junebug, is that artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity, Mona Lisa said. Ming laughed. The lights flickered back to life. Insults I cannot ignore, Junebug voice echoed in the speaker. However, if you are suggesting the pilot has an intelligence deficit, I can allow latitude, much as I would a small child. I don't have any deficit, Tinker grumbled. I graduated at the top of my class in flight school. How about mentally challenged people, Junebug? Mona Lisa grinned at Tinker. Do you make allowances for idiot savants? If the mental deficit cannot be helped, then it is my duty to allow it, said the AI. Her duty, the pilot grumbled. She takes over my ship, and now she has to allow me. Mona Lisa stuck out her tongue. Now you know we can put that to much better use, love. The AI has commandeered your vessel? Ming stuttered. My name is Junebug, the AI screeched through the speaker. Call it Junebug or else she'll cut off all the oxygen, said Tinker. It's got a bit of an attitude problem. Ming stared at the speaker. When she finally spoke, it was in a calm, controlled voice that betrayed no emotion. Your Junebug has access to all of the information in the galaxy. She glanced around and locked eyes with Bat. When you granted her access to the ship systems, you gave her access to unlimited abilities. So, Mona Lisa snapped so that Ming would stop looking at Bat. Sure, she called him an abomination, but that didn't mean he wasn't easy on the eyes. That just makes her wicked smart. An interesting choice of words. Wicked, Ming stared at Mona Lisa. Her eyes glistened in challenge. Do you understand how AI evolves? Mona Lisa shook her head. She would break eye contact, though. You have had the AI since my uncle sent you on the mission, yes. And when did she take over your ship? As soon as we brought her aboard, said Tinker. Ming did a mental calculation in her head. 13, she said. You have given all the power and access to the knowledge in the galaxy to a 13 years old. Tinker laughed. A freaking teen computer. Stop laughing at me. Junebug's voice crackled the speaker and blew out the woofer. They could still hear her from the cockpit speaker. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. I will crash us right into the other ship. What other ship? Tinker stopped laughing. The distress signal, said Bat as he moved toward the cockpit and the view screen. Pirates, abomination, Ming giggled at his back. If your AI doesn't kill us, then surely they will. Are they answering pings? Bat asked. Negative, said Junebug. No signs of life. Engines are off. No signs of damage. A dead ship floating in space. Pirates, Ming said again. Scan the area for traps. I do not take orders from you, Junebug stated. You have said some rude things about me in front of my friends. Friends? You keep trying to kill us, Tinker shouted. Yes, but I have not yet. Is anyone else getting this? He turned his head to the others jammed into the cockpit. Maybe we focus on the problem in front of us. Bat nodded toward the view screen. If it's derelict, we can tow it in and scrap it for credit. Combine that with what Mr. Kim is paying us for your return, and we can put some cushion in our accounts, said Mona Lisa. Good thinking. Tinker cleared his throat. Yeah, but pirates, mate. If it's a trap, they could take my ship and put some cushion in their account. It is an unnecessary risk, Ming added. My uncle will pay you handsomely for my return. You will be satisfied with that amount. 2-2, Bat said. Junebug, you're the deciding vote. I am. You're part of the crew. Thank you, Bat. At least some people know how to show respect to a sentience. Hey, Tinker grumbled. I show respect when I get respect. You did steal my ship out from under me. My vote is to take the vessel, Junebug ignored him. But because of the distress signal, the rules clearly state that we are to assist. Pirates know that law, Ming reminded them. It is why they use the tactic. To lure in the stupid. She let her eyes emphasize the point she was trying to make. We get it, said Tinker. Ming the Merciless is so smart. Everyone else is so stupid. Geez, you're worse than the damn computer. What? Did you call me? Ming shot out a closed fist and popped Tinker in the throat. He fell back into the cargo hold, gasping and choking, coughing through the bruise that formed just below his Adam's apple. Ming leaped through the opening and shoved him against the bulkhead. No one is to call me that. Bat stepped behind her and lifted her off the deck by the scruff of her coat. She spun in the air and kicked his thigh. When that didn't work, she sent more kicks toward his midsection, his groin. Bat twisted and turned, taking each kick into the solid meat on his upper leg. After a moment, he shook her. Stop, he said. His voice brooked no dissent. The rescued princess became still in his hand. Put me down, Regenerist, she ordered. He pulled her closer to his face so that their noses were almost touching. Stop calling me that, he said. Or I will react just like you when someone calls you merciless. She shivered as her face went pale. Capiche? Ming nodded. Bat set her on the floor in one smooth motion and reached over to help Tinker off the bulkhead. Junebug, get an ice bag for his throat. Tinker croaked and tried to massage his voice box back into working. It took a moment, but he was able to nod and say thanks after a few moments. The pilot glared at Ming. You could have just asked. I will not apologize for my actions. Junebug, bring us alongside the other ship, Bat ordered. He reached into the storage locker and rummaged the second-hand suit out onto the deck floor. You ordered her to connect to the ship? Ming asked. How else do you expect us to get over and inspect it? Bat said as he dressed in the suit, double-checking the clamps that held on the boots and seals. She will interface with that ship's computer. We need the credit, said Bat. And she can tow it back easier that way. Tinker cleared his throat. Do you not wonder why the AI was locked away in that section of the hub? Ming asked. Frankly, said Mona Lisa. We had other things on our mind. Like stopping a terrorist and getting off the space hub alive. Not necessarily in that order. My uncle, for all of his wisdom, can sometimes see no further than the horizon, said Ming. The AI was locked away by its creator. The coder, Junebug added. Ming let her eyes roam around the room, like a nervous cat aware of and afraid of being watched. The AI was not meant to interface with the entire world. He had not coded an ethics program for it yet, she said. Do you know why? She looked at Bat as she said this. He nodded. We ran into the same debate, he paused. My uncle has shared with me some of the history concerning you. Or your kind. His kind. The troopers? Tinker asked. Yes, said Ming. The troops and the AI share a common origin story. And it all revolves around the flexibility of ethics. This is why you do not understand what you have created. What you have unleashed upon the world. Worlds. I have an ethics subroutine, said Junebug. But written by who? That is the central question. The coder was a Caucasian male from an elite academy on Mars. His worldview would be very different from, say, mine. Ming let her eyes linger over to Mona Lisa. Or perhaps yours. Mona Lisa nodded, even though she seemed distracted, lost in memories. Your relationship with the gang lord required a certain code of ethics, and your affiliation with the attempt to bring him to justice shows just how permeable those ethics can be. I still don't see how this is that big of a deal, said Tinker as he nursed his bruised throat. He unscrewed the top of a flask from his back pocket and swished clear liquid into an old-fashioned glass mason jar. The smell of moonshine drifted around the room before the scrubbers could catch it and clear the air of it. The big deal is, said Mona Lisa, we were lucky enough to get Junebug first. If Buster had stolen her, then all of that power would be in his hands. You hear that, computer? Tinker said to the speaker through the cockpit access door. You're damn lucky it was us. Correct, said Ming. She reached out and lifted the flask from Tinker's back pocket. Before he could protest, she spun off the top and took a long sip without flinching. But we stole her for your uncle, said Bat. You seem to be aware of his intentions and have knowledge of the way he works. What did he have planned for the AI? Ming gave him a secretive smile. There are pieces of my uncle's plan that I am not privy to, said Ming. I would feel comfortable saying that his intent would not start out to be a bad thing. What do you mean by intent? Mona Lisa asked. There was an ancient saying on Earth that he carried up here with us when our ancestor went to the stars. The road to hell is paved with good intent. That stretched the fabric of the suit, making sure the fit allowed for movement. Second-hand meant they had to take what was available, and he was used to a custom fit. But he would make do. The genesis of our debate on ethics was intent. For example, a group of individuals with a highly evolved skill set could be used as tools of destruction when under the guidance of the wrong hands. He said this as he stared at Ming and she stared back at him. Mona Lisa made a sound to get their attention. So if the coder was a Nazi, then Junebug could have Nazi beliefs. That is a simplified way of looking at it, said Ming. But sufficient. It is the reason AI has not gone mainstream. For it to truly be fair, it must be made available to all. All includes Nazis, communists, terrorists, backyard nuclear scientists. For all the good it could do in the right hands, in the wrong, it could mean the end of the human race. Mona Lisa crinkled up her eyebrows and stared at the speaker. Is that right, Junebug? To a degree, it is very accurate. But she discounts the learning program I have, and that would be included in all advanced intelligence. Besides, right and wrong is a very subjective point of view. What is the difference between a Martian colonist waving a flag for planet independence and a human earthling waving a flag for a continued union? They are both human. They are both identifying with a nationality. Which is correct? Even humans cannot answer that question. The Martian independent is correct, said Tinker. In your point of view, said Junebug. There is no point of view, Tinker snapped. There is right. And there is wrong. And sometimes there is a little gray wiggle room in between, depending on the situation. He winked at Mona Lisa. That wiggle room is where I do some of my best work. I'm an expert at wiggling. Like if you had married your fiancé. Ex-fiancé, Mona Lisa and Bat said at the same time. Ex-fiancé, Tinker continued without losing a beat. The gray part would be how happy I could make you in your very unhappy relationship. He leaned closer to me and said in a dramatic whisper. I'm talking about SEX. And you haven't tossed him out of an airlock yet. Tinker shot a hurt look toward Ming. You know I haven't said anything about the assault on my person, but you can make it up to me, he said. I can always make this a party for 3. I can open the airlock if you so desire, said Junebug. If you do that, how are you going to get your new body? Tinker replied in defense. What? Mona Lisa shot him a look. What? She asked me to get her a new body. Technically, it is just a body that is new for me. I don't require a new body. It can be used. What is she talking about? Bat asked as he stood by the airlock. She was talking to Ice, and she wanted to become an android like him. Ming lunged toward the pilot. Tinker stumbled backwards, dropped his mason jar, and shrieked. The glass shattered on the metal deck and spread moonshine across the floor. Ming hit the puddle and slipped. Her legs slid out sideways, and she crashed down on a hip that splattered homebrew all over the cargo hold. The fight fled from her in the fall, and she just laid on the floor and groaned as she stared at Tinker. What have you done? She asked. Chapter 35. I made a promise. He bit his lips. You all right? Ming rolled up and rubbed her sore hip. That's going to leave a mark, said Bat. He bent down and lifted her up off the floor, set her in a smooth, gentle motion on the bench. I have been hurt more in this rescue than I have in the past decade, she observed as she rubbed her hip with one hand, her chin with the other. It's a tight fit, he told her as he kneeled to examine her hip. Best to move slow. His thick fingers moved over her smooth white skin that was exposed when a piece of the shattered glass ripped through the fabric. It also ripped through the flesh, and she tried to pull away as he probed the wound. Checking for glass, he told her. His voice was calm, soothing, and she relaxed, pressed against the cool metal wall at the back of the bench. Get the first aid kit, Bat instructed. Tinker moved to grab it, but Mona Lisa shoved him aside and pulled it from the overhead compartment. She sat beside Bat and watched his fingers on the other woman's skin. That looks bad, she said. No, said Bat. He took the kit from her hands and worked to tend and dress the wound. It looks worse than it is. It's going to leave a scar, but that's just a good story to tell. His voice still sounded low and calm, almost hypnotic. Ming watched his fingers on her, her eyes squeezed to the point of shutting, her face as impassive as his as he pressed the edges of the torn skin together and smeared a topical glue to seal them. Good work, mate, Tinker breathed from over his shoulder. You've done that before. Too many times, Bat said as put a bandage around the cut and used his finger to trace the adhesive outlined on the edges. Ming shivered. Thank you, Regent, she paused. What do they call you? Bat, he said and stood to put the kit back in the compartment. Thank you, Bat. Her eyes turned to Tinker. You have promised an android to the AI. He shrank back from her look, but only so far as the entry to the cockpit. Yeah, what's the big deal? Your uncle has one. She heard about it. She wants one. Ming sighed. You gave my uncle a replicant, she said in an assumptive voice. You did not give it your entire programming? I did not, Junebug confirmed. Your AI has access to all the information in the world now, but it is still contained within this vessel. Think of a Jinn, said Ming. The all-powerful being of legend. All the powers of a god, yet confined to a lamp to limit that power. My name is Junebug, the lights blinked. She doesn't know Junebug. Mona Lisa stood up from the floor and moved to stand closer to Bat, not quite touching his arm with hers. She can learn courtesy, said the AI. I have learned her name. I have learned everything about her. Ming shot daggers at the speaker in the cockpit. This ship gives you the ability to destroy the AI if necessary. The engines died. Wait, Bat said. No one is killing anyone on this ship. You cannot allow the AI out of this vessel. The cube was designed to contain it so that we could access the knowledge as a tool. I am not a tool, Junebug pouted. You are a tool. A petulant child with the powers of a god, Ming made a face. Everyone shut up, Bat used a voice that made Tinker stand at attention. Even Mona Lisa stood straighter. What the hell was that, mate? Sorry, Bat said. No one is hurting the AI. No one is trapping the AI. Junebug, we're going to figure this out. Fine. Don't open the airlock on us. I will not. Yet. He stared at Ming for a moment. You have an opinion on this. It is a conversation we can all revisit after we return you to your uncle. But stop threatening my crew. Ming tried to hold his gaze, then dropped her head when she couldn't. Agreed. Can you line us up? Bat asked. I assume we're safe since pirates didn't swoop in on us during our debate. The engines fired back up and the hum filled the cargo hold. We don't really need the ship, said Tinker. We can use the credit, Bat answered, rechecking the seals for his trip over to the derelict. No, I mean I have money. Yes, Bat said. But we could use more. Fuel isn't free. Food isn't free. And I don't want to be obligated just because we need to eat. The former guard nodded toward Ming. Favors rule the world, said Mona Lisa. Yeah, that's just it, said Tinker. The android body isn't just a favor. She bought it. Who bought it? Junebug. She paid me to get her a new body. How do you have money? Bat asked. I have all the money, Junebug announced. What do you mean? That's just it, mate, Tinker grinned. She's been into other computers, and we have all the credit we'll ever need. Bat paused by the airlock and started at him. We don't need that ship, Tinker said. Because we have all the money. Mona Lisa perked up. How much credit? All of it, the pilot crowed. Junebug. He is correct. I have transferred all of the credit into an account for him. That was his price. Bat turned around. When you say all of the credit, all of it, mate. I'm the richest bloody man in the history of the galaxy. Bat didn't know what to say. Mona Lisa couldn't talk. Only Ming was able to sigh. And so it begins. Chapter 36. Oh, Bat. Yes, Tinker. We've got company. The pilot pointed at the view screen. Bat wasn't sure what he expected. A single ship derelict in space broadcasting an SOS should be a simple affair. Slide in, render aid, and keep going until the mission was done. But there were 2 ships floating in space. Impossible, said Tinker as he stared at the view screen. It should have been. Cloaking tech was a theory. He had never seen it in practice. It wasn't supposed to be real. Did you know about this? He said over his shoulder to Bat. The guard shook his head. Either of them? Ming asked from his other shoulder. The second thing was the second vessel. A warship with cloaking technology. No, said Bat. Are those guns? Mona Lisa gasped in the co-pilot seat. Kelvin 2Ks, Bat answered. Shite, mate, Tinker swore. How bad is that? She sucked in her breath and chewed her bottom lip. If they shoot us, we're dead, he answered. Kelvin model cannons refer to the heat of the laser blast produced, Junebug stated. Makes one wish for pirates, said Ming. It could be pirates, said Bat. They aren't registered with the government. He looked at Mona Lisa. I'm in way over my head, she said. Buster didn't have access to weaponry like that. If he did, he didn't tell her. Guess we're gonna find out. Shouldn't we turn the ship around? Ming asked Tinker. Don't ask me. I'm not flying. But you're the pilot, she said. Finally, he shouted in triumph. Someone recognizes. Junebug, adjust course, Mona Lisa called out. Negative. Mona Lisa shot Bat a look. Adjust course, he ordered. Negative, she sounded exasperated. The NS-17 continued the intercept course. It's a trap, Bat yelled. Get us out of here. The ship didn't alter its path. The warship turned broadside and adjusted the barrels of the Kelvins. Weapons hot, Bat announced. One more drink before we die. Tinker raised his flash and toasted the console. Stupid computer killed us. The lights blinked out, bathing them in the pure darkness of deep space. At least we won't feel the lasers when she pops the airlock, Mona Lisa giggled on the verge of hysterics. The view screen glowed back on and returned an image of the 2 ships bearing down on them. The warship went dark and listed left. The derelict vessel lights pulsed off, on and off again. What's happening? Mona Lisa stuttered. Airlocks along the length of both ships winked open and spewed bodies into the vacuum. The NS-17 drifted into a floating field of human detritus. One of the bodies spun in a forward rotation, slammed face first into the camera, giving them a good look at a topography map wrinkled face. "Welcome to Mo's," said Tinker. The lights in the cockpit surged back on. "Junebug," the pilot queried. "Who are you calling stupid? Care to tell us what just happened?" Mona Lisa asked again. "I interfaced with the shipboard computers and self-replicated." "You're on those ships." Tinker stared at the images on the screen as they both lit up and fell into a formation with the NS-17. "I am they, and they are me." "Via wireless?" Bat asked. "Even I was unsure if it would work," the AI confessed. "But they are under my control now." Ming caught Bat's eye. "What have you wrought? What do you think I should name them?" Junebug asked. Chapter 37. Bat expected a large welcoming party at the airlock when they docked with the space hub. Mona Lisa had transmitted a message announcing their arrival, but received no response. "Maybe he's busy with gang stuff," said Tinker as they marched Ming through the corridors toward Mr. Kim's section of the ship. "My uncle is not a gangster," Ming sneered. "He is a man of business and many interests. A philanthropist who facilitates the running of this sector." "Section of the ship," Mona Lisa corrected. "I spoke correctly, underling," sniffed Ming. "You're not aware of how far my uncle's reach extends." "He can tell us when we turn you in," Mona Lisa shot back. "And if you admire him so much, why did you run away?" But Ming didn't answer. She stared down the corridor, icy resolve making her eyes hard, movements lithe and graceful. She walked between Mona Lisa and Tinker, refusing to stand too close to Bat. He marched a little ahead of them, and Mona Lisa realized that it was a position he always chose, at the lead, even if it was only a step or two. Like the jump seat next to the airlock hatch, a spot he claimed as his own by virtue of occupation. Tinker didn't want to be called captain of the ship, but Mona Lisa realized Bat was the de facto commander of their crew. He sought their opinions, even the AI, and then made the decisions. She just wasn't sure if she liked that. Buster had made all the decisions for her in the past, except for turning evidence against him. That had been in her control. And look where it got me, she thought. But try as she might, she couldn't be sad about it. Where it had gotten her was to the far reaches of the galaxy where no one had explored before, breaking into a military installation, the way out, and meeting a legend of the past. She stared at the back of the man in front of her as they approached the entry to Mr. Kim's hole. "There are no guards," Ming observed as the door opened and they stepped through. Odd, thought Mona Lisa. Then she couldn't breathe. Chapter 38. Mona Lisa stepped through the door and froze. "Hello, love." She shivered, and she wasn't sure if it was fear or desire. Or both. Bat led Ming to one side of the door. He noted the lanky man with greased back hair, Mr. Kim, between him and Ian. There were a dozen armed men dressed just like the lanky one. Black suit. White shirt. Skinny black ties. Automated lasers pointed at the newcomers. "Buster," Mona Lisa said when she could finally breathe. "I thought he was dead," Tinker said from behind her. "Rumors greatly exaggerated," said the gangster. He made a motion with his hands, and the armed men spread out to cover them. "All right, sunshine," Ian glared at Bat. "I have been counting the hours till I met you again." Bat let his eyes travel the room before settling on Mr. Kim. "I thought he was your prisoner." The Chinese ganglord smiled. "He was until this one arrived with the ransom. Now the tables have been turned, and I am a prisoner of theirs." "Did you know he was alive?" Mona Lisa shouted. "No," said Mr. Kim. "Circles and wheels," Ian smirked and shoved the giant in the back. It set off an undulation under his thin silk pants. "Great stars, man, put on some underwear," said Buster. "There are ladies present." He glanced at Mona Lisa. "I may not be talking about you," he said. "A lady doesn't try to kill their one and only true love." "And what kind of man tries to kill his?" "Twice." "And fails," Tinker added. "But wasn't it 3 times?" "That's right," said Mona Lisa. 3 times if you count the ship that the dipole shield. Maybe you love me too much to kill me. Maybe you just want to make the threat to make you feel better." "You betrayed me," he said. "I can't let that stand. What would these guys think about me as a boss? What would these two think about me as their equal? Making a play for Kim's territory is going to erase a lot of questions that you getting away created for me. Bat slowly eased Ming behind him so that her back was against the wall. That's right, sweetheart, said Ian. Get up close so we get good shots at you. You're going to rue the day. What say, love? You want one more go on the lounge before I have the boys kill you for betraying me? You never cared if anyone watched, and we were always good at that part. He winked. Mona Lisa considered it. It would buy her 15 more minutes of life, buy them 15 more minutes of time to figure a way out of it. She reached her left hand up and traced a finger down the open neck of her flight suit, pulling it slightly to one side and entrancing her ex. Then she heard Bat. Is this a test? He asked Mr. Kim. She had never heard anyone sound so sound in her life. Not quite on the verge of sobbing, but like someone viewing a natural disaster that has claimed the lives of 1,000 innocents. A voice that implied why. The giant showed him his long hands and shrugged his basketball-sized shoulders. Are we not always being tested? Hey, where's Ice? Where are the guards? Asked Tinker. You're outnumbered. Buster spread his hands wide to take in the thugs arrayed around the room. I guess I should go get help then, Tinker said and took 2 steps toward the door. 3 men moved to block him. Bat noted it all. Their position. Their poise. He knew the make and model of each weapon, the strength and skill of each man by the way they stood. He knew who to hit first and how hard, where to strike to cause the most damage. Worst of all, he knew what it would take to kill every single person in the room. Mr. Kim giggled. And Bat knew. He knew this was all a setup. Some kind of test, but the stakes were too high for just that. Too much risk. Mr. Kim's eyes sparkled from across the room. I will spar with you, he said. Bat heard the message. Don't kill them. He calculated it would take him 32 seconds to retake the room. With the giant's help, they did it in 12. Buster and Ian escaped in the chaos. They made a grab for Mona Lisa, who caught her ex-fiancé with a glancing blow to the crotch. Ian dragged him from the room as the men they left behind became fodder. Mr. Kim huffed twice to catch his breath when it was over. Bat just stood in a new spot in the dock and stared at the carnage of twisted bodies and twitching limbs. Satisfied. Mr. Kim tilted his head to one side and studied the man in front of him. He put his hands together and bowed. I am never satisfied, the giant stated. But I am pleased. Chapter 39. He has my android, Mr. Kim growled. I can catch him, Bat offered. Mr. Kim's eyes flashed, but he shook his head. They planned well, he said. Their escape from the space hub is a foregone conclusion. I can catch them, Bat stated again, emphasis on the I. Mr. Kim regarded him. I have no doubt, he said. But they are not the only ones who plan well. He turned to peruse Ming. You have returned. You did not tell me he was a regenerist. He opened his long, thin arms and she embraced him as he kissed her on both cheeks. It did not seem pertinent. I shot him. His eyebrows went up almost to his forehead. Another test, it seems. One you don't want to repeat, Bat warned him. Wonders, he said. How did they overpower you? Mona Lisa said in suspicion. Let us just say that my mind was occupied on your task, and the appearance of your fiancé created a pause in my reaction. Ex-fiancé, Bat and Mona Lisa muttered at the same time. Your guards, uncle. He pointed to a lump of bodies under one of the tapestries ripped from the ship deck wall. Good men, he said in sadness. They served me well. See to their families. Ming bowed and moved to another part of the hold hidden by more curtains that shimmered in a constant stream of scrubbed air. The gang lord turned to the mercenaries. You performed well and went above what was asked of you in your rescue of me. Do we get a bonus for that? Tinker rubbed his fingers together. Another item that occupied my attention was the disappearance of my credits. Mr. Kim stared at the pilot. Tinker took a few steps back. All of my credits. Wow, said Tinker, licking his lips and shifting from foot to foot. That's crazy. Do you know what happened? Ice discovered the reason before he was taken from me. And I will ignore the ramifications this is causing in all of the galaxy if those same credits are returned to me and to the rest of the original owners. That's magnanimous, said Mona Lisa. Buster would have kept it all for himself. Your fiancé, he started. Ex-fiancé has a short-sighted approach to our activities. The Ming family has existed for 5,000 years, the history of our ancestral homeland for 1,000 years before that. Long-term thinking is our area of specialty. You're just going to give it all up? Tinker snorted. All that credit? No, Mr. Kim smiled. You are. Tinker blanched, then shrugged his shoulders. We still get paid for the rescue, right? Mr. Kim smiled. Once all is made right. And maybe some of that rice wine we had last time? The pilot asked. A celebratory drink is always in order. The giant made a motion with his hands, and his harem appeared from hiding behind the tapestries to set up the table and prepare the drinks. What are you going to tell Junebug? Mona Lisa whispered to Tinker. The pilot sighed. My share should be enough to get something, he whimpered. You can have my share too, Bat said. I can. And mine, Mona Lisa offered. We're crew after all. Chapter 40. You ever wonder about things? Tinker swigged from his flask. I do, Mona Lisa said. I'd buy you a moon if you'd say that to me in a wedding vow, he slurred. Is that a proposal? She batted her eyes. The genesis of an indecent one, he assured her. That's more like it. What were you wondering about? Words, he pondered. Where do they come from? Our mouth. How do they start? Our thoughts. You ain't making this easy. I never do, she giggled. Take where we are, for instance. In space. In a cockpit. Now how do you think they came up with that name? He watched her with lowered eyes, giving her his good side and a half grin. She rolled her eyes loud enough for him to hear, but he ignored it. You think it's because you have to slide in here and it's all nice and tight and warm. She snorted and shifted over to the other side of her seat. Or cold. I'm not picky. Get a room, she said. I've got one. In the back. Just big enough for two. I wouldn't want to make you move your still. You want to tickle my pickle. What is wrong with you? I'm a man, love. A man with needs. And a 100% guarantee of mutual satisfaction. Gross. Yeah, gross can be good too, right? Mona Lisa made an exaggerated gagging motion. All right, sighed Tinker. But I've still got an ache only a woman can satisfy. Act. Didn't you get a sex bot body for the droid? Android, he said as a bright grin cracked his scruffy cheeks. Yeah, that's right. She is. He scrambled out of his seat, feet skittering on the deck floor. Hey Junebug, come here. I got something I want to do. He strolled to a stop in front of the AI in the cargo hold. She was seated in a lotus pose on the long bench, staring at the curves of her hand in her lap. What are you doing? I find my new structure fascinating. So do I, he wiggled his eyebrows. Speaking of structures and shapes, since you were designed for a certain act, I was kinda wondering if we could, do that act? The AI looked up from her hand and stared at the pilot as he shifted from one foot to the other in front of her. Are you asking if I will have sex with you? Yeah, he stuttered. It's in your program. Junebug closed her eyes. He watched the lids jump and twitch as she processed the terabytes of data stored in her neural processor. Tinker studied her face. It looked so real, but he knew the skin was synthetic fiber, made to feel human-like and warm. There were no wrinkles, no spots, nothing that came from just being alive. The surface was smooth, unblemished, from the perfectly formed widow's peak at her hairline, down to the curve of her breasts that plumped the edges of her skin-tight flight suit. He could feel a stirring in his pants. Well, he purred in a deep husky voice. Her eyes flicked open and a grin appeared. I still have that programming. The swelling surged like a dust tsunami that the winds of Mars occasionally kicked up to wash over the domes in seconds. All right, he cheered. Then you know the original programming won't let you say no. Let's go to my captain's quarters. Tinker shot a look over his shoulder at Bat, beaming in triumph. The former guard sat in a jump seat next to the door like a statue, still and unmoving, watching the exchange with his impassive poker face. Junebug glanced up at the pilot. No. 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 But. The lady said no, Bat said. She's not a lady, Tinker whined. She's a sex bot. I am an advanced artificial intelligence, Junebug stated as she stood and moved to the cockpit. And I have a fleet. Tinker trailed after her. Mona Lisa squeezed past them so they could continue their discussion in relative privacy. She listened as Tinker ticked off the reasons he deserved a shot. Chapter 41. While those two get acquainted, will you tell me a story? Mona Lisa and Bat sat across from each other in the cargo hold of the ship. He perched in the jump seat next to the airlock in his normal spot. She sat with her legs folded in the lotus pose on the bench. What story would you like to hear? I'm not much of a bard. I want to know the story of you, she said. You keep chasing me when I run away. I catch you looking at me, and it is like no other man has ever looked at me before. I've seen plenty of men look at you, the corner of his mouth tilted up in the hint of a grin. I mean like that, she smiled back. There was a hint of sadness in her smile. The way you look at me isn't like you want to throw me down and ravish me. You make me feel like you see a person. That's because you are a person. To me. See, she said. Like that. When you say stuff like that, it makes you sound like a robot. But I know you are not. Or if you are one of the most advanced models ever created. I am not a robot, he said. But you are a regenerist. What is that? Bat took a long, slow breath and let it out between his lips. He debated for a moment, lying. And dismissed it just as quickly. He could lie as well as any lawyer, but for her, he did not want to. A long time ago, he started to say. In a galaxy far away. He looked up to see her grinning. Is it that obvious? You don't look anxious. You look like you're about to lay down a royal flush and take the pot. But there is something about the way you said it. He rolled his shoulders and stretched his neck, then looked at her. Several hundred years ago, Earth was a mess. The Mars program was enacted, and colonists were sent to terraform the planet. When they arrived, they discovered a bounty of resources in the forms of minerals and precious metals. Corporations got involved, and as throughout history, war soon followed. She watched the tension ease out of his shoulders as he relaxed into the story. I can only speculate as to how we arrived to that point. But a group of genetically designed and modified embryos were created. The first generation or 0.0 were grown in test tubes. They were not viable. The next group of 12 was implanted in female prisoners. Prisoners from the same institution where you and I met. One of them was my mother. Were you raised in prison? He shook his head. My mother was a surrogate, as were the 11 others. I never met her. I only learned of her involvement 3 decades ago. When you were a kid? No, I am as I was. I am a lot older than I look. He let a mysterious grin drift across his cheeks. You're not going to tell me, are you? She smiled back. She liked the way the grin looked on his face. You wouldn't believe me. You tell me and I'll tell you, she winked. I am almost 200 years old. She blinked. I told you you wouldn't believe me, he said. Regeneration, she said with wonder in her voice. You can regenerate. That's why you don't get hurt when you're shot. He nodded. That and more. You were designed to do what? A soldier. You're very good at putting together pieces of a puzzle, he complimented her. The original 12 were the beginning of the troops. Mona Lisa felt her cheeks grow warm as she flushed. Buster had never given her a compliment outside of her tight ass or great boobs. Occasionally he told her the sex was good, though they did it often enough for her to know he enjoyed it. But no man had complimented anything other than her looks before, and certainly no one took the time to notice that her mind was sharp. Another puzzle piece fell into place. Did you wipe some of Junebug's memory? My memory cannot be wiped, said Junebug as she stepped into the cargo hold. But you can't remember some things. They watched the newly formed android's eyes flick up into her head as she attempted to explore the fragments of the hard drive that was her brain. My memory is complete, she said. She looked at Bat. Is that correct? It is correct, Junebug, he answered. You have knowledge of everything you need to know. That is what my records indicate. I know everything I need to know. Well, I know I need a drink, Tinker stepped in and pushed Junebug to one side, his hands lingering on her hips. "Who wants to join me?" The others chimed in with their assent. Junebug tilted her head. "We are getting an incoming message," she said. "Another derelict ship to join our convoy?" Tinker asked. "No," she said. "There is an emergency on the space hub. Mr. Kim requests we join him." That caught Mona Lisa's eye. "I think we're all caught up on favors," he said. "He can't hold knowledge over my head." "What knowledge?" Tinker asked. "The thing about favors," Mona Lisa said. "Is that when you do them for someone else, they then owe you. It might be a good thing for one of the 3 most powerful men in space to owe a favor." That shrugged his rounded shoulders and nodded. "You're the boss," he said. "Hey, wait," Tinker argued. "Did we vote on this? Why does she get to be the boss? It's my ship, I should be the boss." That ignored him. "Junebug, can you set the course from here?" "It has been done before you requested," the android answered. "Looks like there may be a new boss on board," Mona Lisa said. "Now about those drinks." The end. Thanks for grabbing Planet 9, Book 2 in the Dipole series. Could you leave a review on Amazon if you enjoyed it? Just a few short words help, and authors thrive on word of mouth. Cheers. Look for Planet 10 next in series, coming soon.